Okay, we'll get started. All right, everybody. Thank you for coming to this evening's Site and Architectural Commission for October 7, 2020. I'm going to call the meeting to order as the chairperson. And I know that our city planner has a couple of comments before we can actually get into the weeds.
Thank you. Commissioners, staff, and meeting participants, thank you for joining us this evening for the October 7th, 2020 Monte Sereno Site and Architectural Commission meeting. Prior to roll call, I'd like to make clear for the record of this meeting, and it should be reflected in the minutes, that this Site and Architectural Commission meeting is being conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Brown Act and a recent executive order issued by the governor to facilitate teleconferencing to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission at public meetings. The Brown Act sets strict rules for teleconferencing. It requires that each teleconference location be identified in the notice and agenda, that it be accessible to the public, that members of the public be allowed to address the council from that location, that agenda be posted at that location, that at least one member be here in the council chambers, and that at least a quorum of the commission be participating from within Monte Sereno. The governor's executive order has been suspended, has suspended those rules. The executive order does require that we continue to notice meetings in advance and that we provide members of the public an opportunity to offer public comment. Here are some house rules. Before the meeting is called to order, I'd like to point out a few things to assist commissioners, staff, and members of the public to successfully participate in this meeting. Commissioners, please keep your microphones muted until you wish to speak. You have a hot mic. For this commission meeting, we are using Zoom to host the meeting. At the bottom of the Zoom client, there are two icons, chat and raise hand. Please use chat only to report technical issues, such as being unable to hear a commissioner speaking. Please use the raised hand if you would like to be recognized when an item comes up, and you will be enabled to speak by the chairperson. For the public to comment under oral communications or on any agenda item, emails can be submitted to the city planner, limited to 350 words, and they'll be read into the record. This limit is set to adhere to the typical 3-minute allowance for public comment. Only attendees using the Zoom application can use the raise hand option to comment. Participation from a telephone will only be for listening and does not allow for any feedback. And finally, because we are not all in the same room, all votes at this meeting will be taken by roll call. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Can we get started with roll call?
Commissioner Mekachuk?
Here.
Commissioner Kroc?
Here.
Commissioner Harrington?
Here.
Commissioner Wade?
Here.
Chairperson White?
Here.
Just to note, all commissioners are present.
Thank you. And are there any orders of the day independent of our agenda?
No, everything is as presented on the agenda.
Thank you very much. Has all of the commissioners had an opportunity to review minutes from our meeting of September 2, 2020? And does anybody want to entertain a motion to approve those minutes?
I will approve the minutes.
Go ahead.
I move to approve the minutes.
I second it.
Thank you, Heather. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I believe that's 5 ayes. Minutes are approved from our September 2nd meeting. Thank you. All right, we're going to get started into our public hearing aspect of the meeting.
If I can just
Sure.
interject, the public comment on items that are not on the agenda, if you wanted to offer that up.
Sure. It's nice. That's a very polite prompt. Thank you, Jeannie. Is there anybody here who wants to speak to a matter that is not on the agenda tonight? You have 3 minutes for that opportunity. All right, seeing nothing in the chat in that respect, we'll move past that and into our public hearings that are actually agendized tonight. To the point that Ms. Hamilton made in relationship to the opportunity to speak, we're going to afford our applicants tonight 10 minutes if they choose to fill that entire time. They don't have to speak on their particular application. We're going to take public comment for 3 minutes per person, and then afford the applicant 5 minutes thereafter to provide some sort of a rebuttal if they want, not necessary. So everybody, please keep your comments within the timeframes allowed. We have a lot of people present tonight. I don't know if everybody wants to speak, but if they do, it's going to be a very long meeting. And with that, I would ask Ms. Hamilton to introduce our very first item on the agenda at 15184 Elm Park, please.
Thank you, Chairperson White. This is a site development permit for 15184 Elm Park. The proposed project includes basically a remodel reconstruction of an existing 2,921 square foot single-story home, including approximately 653 square feet of additions and a new front porch. The additions are both in the front, which is a small addition, and a larger addition to the rear of the home. This originally started out as a building permit, and what they were proposing to do did not trigger or trip over the thresholds for a site development permit. The size of the additions were less than 750 square feet, and the raising of the height of the ceiling plate from 8 to 10 feet would not raise the height of the roof more than the 24 inches. However, as the construction went along and they realized from a structural standpoint they needed to add more to the walls, they started to take the walls down and replace them rather than sister some structure 2x6s within them. So we had to stop their project and rightfully so bring them in for a site development permit, which if they were to take on that project today, they would need a site development permit because it would be akin to a demolition and a rebuild. And again, just to point out that they are, with the exception of the two additions, the small, approximately 90 square feet in the front, and it's about 560 square feet in the back, utilizing the existing foundation. You will notice that because they did take all the walls down on the existing garage, there was a small corner that did project into the setback. Unfortunately, because they did take the walls down, they no longer got the benefit of what would have been considered a legal non-conforming encroachment into that setback. So that's why you're seeing a little clip to the corner of the garage. They are updating the finish of the home, really bringing it up to the higher standard that you're seeing throughout the neighborhood with the remodeling and renovation of a lot of homes in this Bicknell neighborhood. So with that, I'm available for any questions.
Ms. Hamilton, I have one question before we hear from the applicant on this. We received a draft set of conditions that may be applicable to our approval process here. In other words, we may condition our approval on acceptance of these various conditions. Has the applicant had an opportunity to see that?
Yes, I did forward it to the applicant. And again, as I mentioned earlier, this is the direction that staff is going to go in with respect to site development permits. This is, although it's referred to as a memorandum of decision for site development permit, it's akin to the site development permit, which typically would have the facts and the findings that are necessary and From staff standpoint, it's going to be crafted to reflect what we would recommend to the council and why, and then coupled with some standard and possibly special conditions.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, does anyone have a question of Ms. Hamilton before we have the applicant provide some comment in relationship to this project? All right, seeing none, is there anybody here that wants to speak on behalf of Ms. Swan or herself in relationship to this project?
All right.
Hi, Ms. Swan.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Everybody else, yes? They're
Oh,
nodding.
awesome. Oh, no, I'm not on video. I was prepared for video, so that's my Glamazon shot. Okay.
Oh, well, that's very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it, and thank you, Jeannie. It's been great getting to work with you, and I appreciate the support that you've been helping us to guide us through this. This is my first home and definitely an ambitious project if you saw any photos of the house before. But I absolutely love this house. It's my dream home. I'm building my dream home. The neighborhood is absolutely amazing. So we did prior to the start of construction, my amazing contractor went around and introduced himself, made himself available with his resources if there were any questions, as well as myself. And a lot of the neighborhood was just grateful that essentially exactly what Jeannie had said, this home will be brought up to more of the elevation and the higher standard in specifically on that street and in that area. But it's my dream home because there's not a lot, the bones of that house are absolutely phenomenal. We want to keep in turn with the modern farmhouse, keyword being modern. A lot of the appliances and the home itself really haven't been, brought up to speed since around the 1960s. So they're definitely dated and just kind of need a facelift in that regard. And that's what we're hoping to do. So keeping it one story, keeping that modern farmhouse look, but making it more modernized and livable. So beyond that, I just appreciate the time to talk and love the neighborhood, love Monte Sereno, and excited to build my dream home.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Some of the commissioners may have a question or two for you. I know I do, but does anybody else want to ask Ms. Swan any questions about her application or project?
Well, I think you can go. You're all ready. You go first.
Thanks. Oh, they're so sweet to me. Great lot. It's going to be a great project. I do have some question because we ordinarily receive a materials board if we're physically present within the city council chambers. And I see here vertical siding, and do you know what the nature of the materials to be used for vertical siding will be?
So it's a board and batten, hardy board and batten.
Okay, great. And then the pillars that are going to appear, I think it's on the rear elevation. Are those also going to be wood?
Those are going to be wood, yes.
Okay, great. That's the only questions I had for you. Thank you.
Oh, I thought you were going to stop me. Okay. That's a great question.
No, we don't do math here. Any other commissioners for Ms. Swan?
Looks pretty straightforward. I don't have any questions.
All right, Ms. Swan, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
We'll open up to public comment, and then if you want to come back and talk to us again, you're more than welcome to. Is there anybody from the public here tonight that wants to speak on this particular project? If you could make yourself known through the chat feature, then I might be able to see you. And I'm not a Zoomer, but I don't see anything in relationship to this particular project. Is that consistent with your findings there, Ms. Hamilton, just so I don't skip anyone?
Yeah, we don't see any, we look at the raised hand,
Okay,
and we don't see anybody raising their hand.
great. All right. Then I think we're going to turn it back to the commission for some discussion regarding the application. Anybody have thoughts on this one that wants to start?
Sure, I'll start if that's okay.
Good.
I would like to disclose that I went to the site today and the applicant basically was there and gave me a tour around the property, explained the history and what they're doing, and it seems to me that it will fit in the neighborhood. She had indicated that no one had objected to it, and I saw the sign up getting noticed, And I think it's going to be a great addition to the neighborhood, and it's going to fit in reasonably well.
Thank you, Brian. Anybody else?
I'll just back that up. I think it's going to be a great improvement to the neighborhood. There's only a little bit of the existing home left to kind of get any indication of what it looked like before. And judging from the condition of what's there, this is definitely going to be an improvement and will enhance the neighborhood character. So I'm all for this one. I don't have any objections.
Heather or Jennifer, do you have any concerns or questions about this?
No, I agree. I went out there. It looks like it's gonna be a really nice home.
And I went out as well. I agree. I also like the landscape plan and what they're planning on putting in there. I think that will be an asset to the home and the neighborhood as well.
I agree. I think we all had an opportunity to go out there. It's an absolutely beautiful lot, and I think it's going to be a beautiful home. With that, I would move that we approve the application as submitted with the memorandum of decision and conditions associated with that. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Yeah, I heard Wade first for a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, I think we're 5-0 on that one. Good luck with your project, Ms. Swan. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
All right.
moving forward, pursuant to the governor's executive order, we actually have to do all of our votes by roll call.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rudin. Should we redo that one?
Out of an abundance of caution, I'll say yes.
Okay, that's fair. All right, Jeannie, if you can call out the commissioners' names, and we'll each have an opportunity to speak.
So again, motion was to approve as reflected in the memorandum, draft memorandum of decision and standard conditions. Roll call, Commissioner Mekachuk.
Aye.
Commissioner Harrington.
Aye.
Commissioner Kroc.
You're muted, Commissioner Kroc.
Commissioner Kroc.
Oh God, I'm that person. Aye.
Commissioner Wade.
Aye.
Chairperson White.
Approve, yes.
Okay, that motion passes 5-0.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rudin, for helping us with that. And thank you, Ms. Hamilton, for making the roll call. All right, we're going to move then forward to item number 2 on our agenda tonight, which is a project on 18240 Daves Avenue. Ms. Hamilton, if you could introduce that particular project to us, we can begin consideration of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson White and Commissioners. This is an application for, I'll read them all off, a site development permit, a special use permit, and a variance for the addition, a first floor and a second floor addition to an existing historic structure. The additions are approximately, approximately, it's an existing 3,360 square foot historic adobe home, and the additions combined at the first and the second floor are 489 square feet and 819 square feet respectively. The special use permit, so the site development permit is just for, the addition, as well as the special use permit being required, given that this is a historic structure on the city's historic inventory. The variance being requested is to allow for an encroachment into the side setback at the first floor of approximately 4 feet down to 19 inches, and at the second floor of 5 feet down to 34 inches. First floor required setback is 15 feet. The second floor required setback is 20 feet. If you read through the staff report, I tried to walk you through, you know, what the requirements were as to the proposal. You know, this, I think the first bit of information to really put out there is, although this site is zoned R144, the provisions in our zoning regulations require that if the average slope on the lot is 10% or greater, we have to utilize a slope density formula to determine what the actual minimum lot size should be, and then use that to determine how that property may or may not be affected vis-a-vis the development standards that would apply to it. In the case of this property, as submitted, the slope was determined to be 23.9% over about a 44,005 square foot lot, which effectively put the R120 development standards in place on this property. So that reduces the allowable home size, as well as it also affected the allowable structural coverage and impervious coverage. So it reduced all of those. So what you're seeing is a variance to encroach into the required setback of 15 feet at the first floor and 20 feet at the second floor, because that's the R120 setback standards. So, and again, as you may have been aware, I think most of you are around, Commissioner Mekachuk might not have been sitting on the commission at the point. This did come through a little less than a year ago with a request. At that time, the commission did recommend variance at the first floor, but did not recommend the variance at the second floor. They, you know, it moved on to the council. Council, you know, considered the applications, and their action was to deny the requests and encourage the property owner, the applicant, to, you know, work through the issues with any neighbors and come back at a later date to and welcomed a reapplication once he was able to, you know, work with the neighbors and, you know, come up with a redesign. If you read through the report, I tried to compare the previous proposal with this new application, and there's been a significant modification in as to the requested encroachment into the setback. One of the reasons why the variance is being requested is, again, this being a historic structure, there's some limitations relative to how you should go about modifying it. You can modify historic structures, but again, there are certain standards in which you should work within to do that. This being an adobe structure, that in and of itself is one of the kind of historic factors. So to break through the walls or to, you know, break down the walls would not be a desirable approach to adding on to this home, and also to limit the areas in which you would add on to, so that you can keep as much of the original form as practical. As discussed in the report, there had been a previous addition approved at the second story on the east side, and the proposal really is to continue that second story over a first floor addition. As designed, it does add some balance to what currently is a lack of balance with that second story addition over a small portion of the home. The home itself has a very small kitchen. So again, one of the desires is to expand the floor area for that kitchen area to really make it a usable kitchen area and to add an area that you can use for dining. This would all add to the overall preservation of this structure and make it, give it much more of a livable floor area, because currently it really is not up to even a minimal standard of what you might find in today's homes. The other modifications that have been made with this application is to reduce the overall profile approximately a foot, to push it down from the previous application, so that you actually will now in this proposal to step down into the first floor addition. The materials used for the second story addition really are proposed to take on the materials of that previous addition and not to try and replicate adobe construction or whatnot, so that there's a continued separation of any modifications to the structure from the original adobe construction. I kind of walked you through in the report, the various findings that would need to be made relative to a variance. There is a need to identify some special circumstances unique to this property, which causes it to not be able to have the same opportunities as other properties in the area. One of them being that it is an extremely steep sloped site, which is more than likely why the original home was constructed where it was, up at the top of the hill, accessed by a private driveway that serves about 4 homes. Additionally, because it's a historic structure, it's very difficult to move this sort of structure, so it's kind of locked in place given its adobe construction, and again the physical form of it and the internal layout is such that, again, to really add on to it with and preserve the overall integrity of the structure, there's limited opportunities or areas that make sense to really add on to it, given the objectives and the previous additions. So again, staff presents that the special circumstances of the topography, the site topography, and the presence of the historic structure are there to be able to make the finding to support a variance. As to the special use permit, city's municipal code requires that certain findings be made relative to, additions to historic structures. And again, through staff's analysis, looking at the sensitivity of the addition and its preservation of the historic structure. I think also pointing out that this property owner did enter into a contract with the city referred to as a Mills Act contract, and as part of that contract, although there are tax savings that come along with it, there's an obligation by the property owner to reinvest those tax savings into the historic structure, to upgrade it over a 10-year period, and to basically go into the preservation and the rehabilitation of the historic structure. This property has met those obligations the last couple years since the entering into the contract with the city. other findings that are needed to be made with the special use permit are that the proposed project would not adversely affect the character or integrity of the designated feature. Again, I think in my discussion in the staff report, the proposed addition is really to the rear of the structure and a continuation of an existing second story addition, which really kind of allows them to blend this addition, and it minimizes any impact to the perimeter walls of the existing home. Other findings, it will not result in a significant environmental impact. It cannot be mitigated. Again, in working with Secretary of Interior standards and how you would go about adding to a residential structure, recognizing that it is an addition, you don't necessarily want to replicate the original construction. You want to create some differences, but in this case, you do have an opportunity to blend an addition with a more recent addition, which that addition in itself could also be considered part of the historic fabric of this structure. And then the exterior of the improvement will not adversely affect or be compatible with the external appearance of the existing structure. Again, just tying everything into what you're seeing out there now, adding some balance to the overall structure and keeping it within a reasonable footprint of the larger home, and not causing any additions to kind of dwarf the larger adobe construction. And then as to the site development permit and the findings that need to be made, again, the proposed addition, again, this is a unique home in this neighborhood. Like a lot of the neighborhoods in Monte Sereno, there are a variety of architectural styles. The addition is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, again, in that there are a mix of styles. There are existing two-story homes in the mix within the immediate neighborhood. And again, the proposed addition is really just continuing the existing two-story portion of the home. The orientation and location, does it take into consideration the visual impact which could result? There have been additional modifications to this proposal to further try to minimize any visual impacts. Again, the home is far up the hill, so the total square footage of the additions is less than 50% of the existing home. It's just an extension of the existing footprint, and doesn't look to really blow out the overall footprint of the building, because again, it's kind of in a fixed location, so there's a limit to how far it can extend out. But because again, it's up in that corner of the site, there's some constraints there. Again, the architecture, is it consistent with the city's design guidelines? This proposal really is, I believe, you'll hear a lot of people saying, well, it's not stepping down the hill. Well, what it is doing is it is continuing an existing first floor square footage. So the intent of the addition to expand on a kitchen would not be practical to, step it down the hill and create a different floor level. You already have 2 levels of living area. You wouldn't necessarily want to create that 3rd level. of living area, given the existing home and layout. The location of the proposed addition, again, really is within the current location, and so the amount of grading will be minimal. You're just expanding out to the south. This property slopes steeply down to the west towards Dave's. And again, to step down would really literally create almost a detached living area. Let's see what else. The previous proposal did have some tree removals. Those are not part of this. As the commission is aware, the property owner did come through with just a single detached garage, which again is not subject to an SUP, so you all did approve the site development permit, and that's to bring a garage closer up to the home, but distant enough so that it doesn't impact the the historic integrity of the structure. I think overall, the applicant has done his due diligence to meet with staff and any concerned citizens, more specifically the neighbor downslope. He's worked to try and address any concerns related to visual impact by really pulling back the proposed encroachment, pushing the profile down at least a foot. As he had previously done, there are screening plants that have been planted along the property line to further fill in what used to be some lush landscape that created some privacy screens. And through the typical design treatments of minimizing window areas, pulling decks around to the back and having them all within any outdoor open area, all within the setbacks, the required setbacks, and creating a privacy wall, the applicant has taken the direction of council and tried to work with the resident and the design of the home to address those issues that were presented through the previous project. So staff does recommend, especially given the modifications from the previous proposal, that the Site and Architectural Commission recommend to the City Council approval of the requested special use permit, site development permit, and variance, given the findings as presented in the staff report and draft resolution that would be moved on to council. Sorry. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Ms. Hamilton, I have a question. Are we making decisions independent of whether another, and this actually may be for Mr. Radin, I apologize if I'm posing it to the wrong person, but we're making a decision in relationship to the request for the variance. We're making a separate decision in relationship to the request for the special use permit, and then ultimately, if we get there, a request for the site development plan. Those are three different decisions we're making tonight. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes.
Thank you both. Sorry. And then Ms. Hamilton, how many other historical properties does Monte Sereno have?
I think we may have about 5 in total. I know we do have 2 Mills Act contracts maybe, but I think there's maybe 5, 6 at the most. Not very many. It's really just a handful.
Thank you very much.
Jeannie,
Any other questions for Ms. Hamilton, you guys?
I did.
Okay, sorry.
go Heather.
Okay. Jeannie, you had mentioned that some lush landscaping was removed. Which property was that removed on? Was it the applicant's property?
No, I believe that, and I'm sure she can speak to it when she comes up, the property owners at 18290 Dave's did some vegetation, I'll refer to it as vegetation management, because again, I don't know, what was behind it, but it was the adjacent downslope property.
Okay, thank you.
My question, Jeannie, so although the physical size of this lot would lend us to believe it's R144, it's actually not. It's R120 because of the slope, correct?
Well, it is still zoned R144. However, the regulations in our municipal code would cause us, given the average slope being 10% or greater, to run through a slope density formula, which could affect either the lot minimum lot size, the impervious surface, the structural coverage. So we haven't rezoned the property.
Okay.
It still is zoned R144, but there are regulations in the Muni Code that need to apply to properties if there's an average slope of 10% or greater. And
Okay.
that could affect the development standards that they're subject to.
Hence the setbacks, right?
Correct.
Okay. And was this determined by a professional land surveyor or, sorry. Who determined that meets who did the slope density calculations to officially determine that this lot can enjoy the setbacks, the lesser setbacks afforded in R120 zone?
Well, I did. I ran the numbers that they gave me. I'm assuming that and you will see that there's some maybe discrepancy in addition or whatever, but I took the slope that was given to me by the applicant of 23.9%. And then you take the overall lot size, the net lot size, and then you run it through the slope density. And basically what happens is, I can go through it, but basically you run it through all three district formulas, and you determine that the minimum lot size that's determined by the slope density formula compared against the actual lot size, the one where there's the smallest delta, that's the district in which it will be subject to as far as development standards.
Okay,
So,
I just want to be super confident that it does in fact, because the differences in setback are significant. It goes
well,
from,
again, also remember that not only is it the difference in setbacks, but it also affects the dwelling size. And then also because of that, this, although it's subject to the R120 and would otherwise be allowed to have a 30% structural coverage, because of the slope and the formula, its structural coverage has been reduced down from 30% to 30% to 20, and the impervious coverage has been reduced down 40 to 36. So it doesn't affect the setbacks. It affects, their whole, the whole opportunities on the site. So although R144, in theory, you could have a 6,000 square foot two-story home, he doesn't benefit from that. Because he's subject to the R120, he's subject to the R120 across the board, as well as seeing how that slope affects the structural coverage and the impervious coverage. Because if you read in the development standards, you'll see or based on the slope density formula. So
my point being, there's a lot hinging on this slope density formula on this particular project. And bottom line, getting down to it, it's the variance that's the crux of this project here. I mean, everything else is relatively straightforward. I just want, if we're going to hang our hats on this 15-foot and 20-foot second floor setback, I want to be super confident that the numbers that were plugged into the formula, if they're given to you by the owner, I want to be super confident that they are in fact correct, because our judgment is going to be based effectively on that number.
Yeah, well, they have Lancer, and they could, speak to it. I think the only one issue might be that the numbers that were added up, the resident said, well, their math was wrong, so they only have a 22.45% slope. Well, that would give them a larger house, and frankly, I'm going to go by the numbers that the applicant gave me as far as dwelling size.
Yeah.
Neither of them, whether it's 22.45 or 23.9, both of them still subject it to the R120 standard. So this is a formula that's used a lot in the hillsides, and we even have some properties like on Greenwood that are zoned R144 but have a 38% slope and are subject to the R18 development standards.
Yeah, I totally understand the formulaic aspect of it. I just want to make sure we're hanging our hat on good data, and that is data provided by a professional land surveyor.
Yes.
Okay. That's all.
Anybody else with questions for Ms. Hamilton? I have one procedural question for Ms. Hamilton, or maybe Mr. Rudin. With the chat feature, people from the public are making comments. I don't know if those are entered into the record at all, and they're supplemental to the opportunity to speak at this particular hearing, or whether
No, they are not.
Okay.
As I stated in the beginning, it is only for technical issues, and it will not be entered into the record. So if people are putting things in the chat, they need to speak for anything to get into the public record.
Okay, very good. That's helpful.
I think maybe the problem is that some people don't understand that this is not the time to speak. So maybe we need to remind the rules.
Yeah, so folks, the chat feature is not your opportunity to supplement the public comment period. You'll have an opportunity to speak on this project for 3 minutes. And we're going to be pretty strict with that, Cap, because there's actually quite a bit to do tonight. So if we could avoid supplementing comments on the chat line, that would be helpful to me. And I will stick instead with the raising of hands when that opportunity arises. But at this moment, we're actually going to invite, unless there's any other questions for Ms. Hamilton, I'd like to invite the applicant or his representative to come forward and provide some comments in support of this project. Is that okay with the rest of the commissioners?
Yes.
Great. Okay. With that said, does the applicant or his representative want to speak to the commission? Okay. I thought I saw the applicant and his architect amongst those that were attendees. If they don't want to speak, that's fine, but I do want to afford them that opportunity if that's the circumstance. I see Mr. Meinwieser's present.
He said he's trying to speak. Are you muted?
Hello?
There we go.
Hello? Can you hear me
Okay, there
okay?
we go. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm technologically deficient, I guess. Peter Gall, I'm the homeowner for 18240 Daves. Thank you for inviting me to speak tonight. I'm representing my project, as Jean mentioned, in hopes to obtain full recommendation from Site and Architecture. I do want to thank the staff for drafting a thoughtful and well-developed staff report. I do want to start with noting that my home is only visible by 4 physical addresses, 18230 Daves, 18232 Daves, 18234 Daves, and then 18290 Daves. Originally, prior to my original submission, all 4 addresses I met with, and all 4 addresses were in support of the original presentation. I did learn about an hour or so prior to the original presentation that 18290 had expressed some concerns, and then those have progressed over a period of time. And I'll address those more in a moment. We do want to make a couple quick comments. The property line that borders the 18290 address is not typical, or maybe it's typical, but it's just weird. It goes down straight, then it angles off, and then it goes down straight again down to Dates Avenue. I will note that the addition that I'm proposing tonight is fully outside of any setback requirement on the angle and on the downward straight line slope down to Dates Avenue. And so I'm just, we're speaking about a section of property that's on an area up to that angle. The other thing I wanted to note was that my house is unique, as Jeannie has mentioned, and it being adobe, my walls are 2 feet thick. And so by being 2 feet thick, I lose over my property structure 600 to 700 square feet of living space. So I just wanted to make a note of that. Over the course of time, I did meet with, actually developed an alternative set of plans together with my architect, who will also be speaking tonight. Once I had those developed, I originally presented those in July of this year. When I did so, I then met with the homeowner that had expressed concern, 18290, with the city manager and Jeannie to review the plans and to listen to any concerns or any feedback that RUPA would provide to me. Based on that, I decided to make additional alterations to the plans that I submitted, and I'd like to outline those if I could. On the first floor, I'll note that there was an existing cement porch with an arbor that went within 28 inches of the property line. I have removed that already. Also on the first floor, I have pulled that further away from the property line so I encroach less into the setback. The original proposal had an encroachment into the setback of about a span of about 37.5 feet. And that setback encroachment was approximately 239 square feet in total. I've reduced that down to 100 square feet. And then I have moved the entire exterior deck that was originally proposed. And I might note that the first floor, as originally presented, was recommended by Site and Architecture, as I believe Jeannie mentioned earlier. The exterior deck was moved entirely outside of the setback. What I did is I lowered the first floor by a foot, thereby reducing the appearance of the first floor to the neighboring property. And it also allowed me to reduce the height of the ridgeline. So the ridgeline actually reduced by just about 4 feet. And in order to improve the privacy of 18290 Daves, I added a full height privacy wall on the exterior deck along the angle that I described earlier, where the deck protrudes. All of the glass facing 18290 Daves has also been obscured, or will be obscured, to ensure privacy for both myself and for 18290. On the second story, I have an existing porch, and I'm going to be removing that. The original proposal also had a Juliet balcony off the second story, and there will be no balcony. I removed the balcony. I also pulled the second story in so that it is stepped from the first floor. And as a result, I minimized the encroachment into the setback from 376 square feet to only 128 square feet. Essentially, the angle or the point where the property line, where the corner of the house, where right before the angled section of the property line, I encroach on the first floor about 19 inches is what we're talking about. And on the second story, 2 foot 10 inches. And then just carrying a straight line back to the house. The exterior balcony, I did install 35 screen plants along the property line. They're Carolina laurels. There was some question about the height. I have Wikipedia up right now, and it does show a maximum height of that plant at 43 feet. You will notice that I did include line of sight drawings that do show no visibility, once the very little visibility currently, and then little or no visibility when those plants reach maturity. Currently, the line of sight drawings with the mature section of those drawings, the plants are at about 13 feet, so they're not full height in those drawings. As Jeannie mentioned, there was a substantial amount of vegetation. I think I have pictures. Is it possible to show those pictures? Before and after, Jeannie?
Yeah, they were forwarded to the commissioners and they are attached to the agenda.
Okay. All right, well, so I do have before and after pictures of the vegetation, trees, bushes, shrubbery
It's
that was existing
applicant's
between
supplemental presentation.
the visibility of my structure and Rupa's Pool. Essentially couldn't see Rupa's Pool before from my house, and now it's plainly visible because of the removal. I'm not exactly sure why that was done, but that was done. Originally, the screen plants also were a little bit too close, according to my neighbor, up to the property line. They were about 1.5 feet away from the property line, and I did agree to voluntarily move those to 3 feet from the property line, and that work has already been completed. With that, I do know that 18290 will be presenting some objections to my presentation. I don't agree with those objections, but I would like to listen to what she has to say first and then comment afterwards. And so I'd like to pass this off to my architect, unless anybody has any questions for me.
Anyone have any questions for the applicant? Thank you, Mr. Gold.
Thank you.
And Mr. Meinweiser, you're muted. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Welcome.
Good. Glad to be here finally. So because I was fiddling with the computer, I'm not sure all of what Peter covered. So please stop me immediately if he's already talked about how we lowered the building height and where that measurement is taken from.
That was not, I don't think Peter had an opportunity to discuss that. So if you want to address it, that's fine.
Good. And I wanted to address the location of the addition. A number of people throughout this review process on all sides have prompted that perhaps we should put the addition on the right-hand side so that we didn't build it into the setback. And if you look at sheet A4, the existing floor plans, I wanted to point out that it's not just the outside walls. It's not just any one feature like the adobe. It's the entire package that is important, including those beautiful interior rooms. And if we were to put a kitchen on the right-hand side, how would we get to the living room, the other public rooms? We'd have to blast through the bedrooms to do that. And that just really wouldn't fit today's standards of how we live in a house, nor would it meet the Secretary of the Interior's standards. So we've been very careful to tuck the addition into the back of the building so that when you drive up the street and the front view is the most important view, the front view is not really affected by what we're doing. That's why we put it in the back. We've addressed the setbacks. So the next thing I wanted to address was the interpretation of the Secretary's standards. Perhaps it would help if I point out that I'm a licensed architect in California with a professional Bachelor of Architecture degree from Penn State, and I have worked as a preservation architect for decades. I've lectured extensively throughout Northern California on preservation topics, including the use of the Secretary's standards and the Historical Building Code. I have served in your chairs for 6 years as the Tuolumne County Historic Preservation Commissioner, 5 years as the Architectural Advisor to the Architectural Review Committee of the City of Campbell, and for 35 years plus, I've been the Architectural Advisor to the Landmarks Commission of the City of Santa Clara. So I know how to apply the Secretary's standards, and further, I meet the Secretary of the Interior's professional qualification standards that you'll find in the Code of Federal Regulations 36 CFR Part 6. And that set of standards for professionals is used by our own Office of Historic Preservation in Sacramento. I've been applying these standards ever since the first one was published in 1978. And I want to tell you that they do allow for improvements and alterations to continue and prolong the life of any historic building. We're not preserving this in amber. It's not a museum. We have to make it usable by a modern family. So changes were made to the utilitarian spaces only, while the more important spaces that I just pointed out, the living room, those bedrooms, the back porch, all those things have been not only preserved, but actually restored. Peter did a lot of work on that. You'll notice on...
Mr. Meinweiser, this is going to, I hate to interrupt you. I know this is going to sound rude, but we have a lot of people that want to talk tonight. And I did tell everybody at the outset that the applicant was going to have 10 minutes, and you're a minute over already. But I do know, and we do have the opportunity for commissioners to ask questions and issues regarding the slope density formula and how that was evaluated and measured have come up. So if it's all right with you, I'd like to have the commissioners ask questions of you, and then maybe you can touch on the points.
It's quite fine. I didn't intend to go over, and I would like to speak to that question about the slope density.
Okay, well, that is a question that I know that we have, and why don't you start there? And then if the commissioners have additional questions, we can follow those up. So I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but I just want to be fair to everybody.
No, that's quite fine. I wasn't watching the clock here.
Never
so I was befuddled by the call-in procedure. So if you look at sheet A2, you will see that that has been prepared by a professional surveyor who has given us a topo map of the entire site. And there are a bunch of figures over at the top right. And then you'll see his final calculation where he comes up with the 23.9%. So this is what we gave to Jane, to Ms. Hamilton. It wasn't something that we generated ourselves. It came from the surveyor.
Great.
That's
Thank
what
you
I'm
very
looking
much.
for. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Meinweiser, commissioners? All right. Hey, Mr. Meinweiser, thank you very much for your comments. There'll be an opportunity for you or Mr. Gold to speak again after we take some public comment on this. And I'm sure you'll have some comments, perhaps in response to some of the public comments. But thank you both very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the chance to speak.
All right. With that, we're going to try to do public comment. I'm going to make one comment here. I probably should just close this chat box altogether, but some people are asking questions of the city planner, and this is not the opportunity for that. We're not going to have the audience ask questions of the city planner. The commissioners get to ask questions of the city planner, but unfortunately the audience does not. I apologize. That's something that was laid in stone long before I ever became a commissioner. So we are going to turn it over to public comment. And the first hand that I see raised is that of the lower neighbor who we all want to hear from, Ms. Shakar.
All right, this is Rupa Shekhar here. Jeannie, can you tell me how I can share my deck here? I don't have that icon that you were talking about. I don't want my 3 minute to start. But
It's not going to start until we get you up and running. So hold on.
okay, I think I got it.
You got it now? You see it on the bottom there?
I think so, and I am
Okay.
right now. All right, so before my 3 minutes starts, I also want to make sure that there were quite a few questions from the applicant the commissioners and Jean, the city planner for us. So why don't I address the questions first and then I will give my 3 minutes with you all. So
The city planner did not have any questions of the speaker.
I don't think it works that way. So you got 3 minutes. I'm starting now.
Okay, got it. All right. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'm Rupa Shekhar, the immediate downhill neighbor of 18240 Davis Avenue. I strongly object the proposed plan as it adversely impacts our family due to the following reasons. One, we do not agree the rezoning of R144 to R120 without a public hearing for rezoning. And then a couple of other reasons is that this proposed plan was previously discussed with Site and Architecture Committee and City Council, and the concerns raised there were not addressed. The 18240 Davis Avenue is already privileged with low taxes, existing variances, and large open flat area in the front, and violates many codes, including California Government Code, municipal codes, Monte Sereno city design guidelines, and violates standards of the Secretary of Interior standards. And of course, there are a lot of inaccuracy of data in the staff report and in the source data. So how does it adversely impact us? There's a 29-feet structure, which is over the Monte Sereno reserved course, building height of 21 feet, which is sitting on top of 30 feet above the ground from us, which is detriment to our family and property value, causes hazardous condition for us, interferes with the reasonable enjoyment of property by us and my kids. Privacy and security is totally compromised. The integrity of our pool and the hill is compromised. Setback, which is supposed to be the buffer zone for safety during fires and earthquakes, completely compromised. So this is just a view, a picture taken from the property line. You were asking about why some of the bushes are taken. My neighbor complained to the code inspector stating that he has issues with our dog, he has issues with our chickens, he has issues with our overgrown bushes. Our code inspector knocked on the door, threatened to give a citation, and said that this has to be vegetation has to be controlled as per the fire safety hazard regulations. And some of the concerns that the commissioners, Mr. Wade, Mr. White, and Mr. Harrington, and Mr. McKechek had brought a few concerns about how tall the story pools were, the mass and bulk of the proposed plan, and how Ms. Harrington has told that because the applicant has a constraint does not give him the right to encroach towards the neighbor. And during the last commissioner meetings, commissioners were driven to arrive at a compromise. Compromise is unfair for us because the applicant is already privileged with existing variants, but opts to encroach on us, constantly pushing the envelope. Consequences of purchasing the Adobe home and entering into Mills contract should not be imposed on us. And further down to the city council members' report, Mr. Lobaway had clearly called out how the plan does not follow the design guidelines, and he did not approve any of the variances. Mr. Lahi had brought down that historic structure should not be used as a sword to seek variance. This is the house the applicant bought, and he should know how to deal with that. And Mrs. Sterner had called out as to how the 3-story high structure looking down on the pool with kids swimming and playing could be a little concerning. And that is a huge concern for us even now. And Mr. Luthor has called out as to how the applicant built a dream home on the property down in the flat, treat the current Adobe as a feature for Monte Sereno to be proud of, treating it as an ADU. And the entire application was denied for elements such as vertical mass, visual privacy impact, and the encroachment of the setback spaces. We spent some money with an independent architecture design person, and this is how the topography of the 3D model looks. Proposed plan is pushed to the perimeter of the property, causing massive visual impact to us, hovering over our entire backyard. And then the proposed plan is a massive structure on top of the hill, and this is the structure you see in the bottom right corner as to what we look right now. Structures are permanent, and we are talking about screening, and why is the applicant expect me to maintain my bushes to have privacy to cover his structure? I don't understand. Screening techniques should be used as a remedy for the existing problem, but it should not be part of the plan. That is ridiculous. And encroachment in the R144 setback space. If you look at the vertical segmentation of the huge massive structure, you can see how much the second story setback has been encroached. It's just supposed to be 40 feet. And the first floor should be 20 feet. And this is ridiculously high. And it's about a 3-story building that we have. And these
Ms. Shekar, I'm going to interrupt you for a minute. We're beyond 3 minutes.
Okay.
I gave you 4. Right. And we all received this very document that you're going through. So we've all had an opportunity to review this. I'm going to give you 1 more minute. Is there something that's not in this document that we need to know?
So Mike, I just want to make sure that our property value is not deprived, and then these city guidelines are met. In the beginning, Mr. White, you all mentioned that you did not have a chance to look at the documents, and that's why I'm kind of making sure that I review this. If you've already done it, then I think you all get the point that I've depicted in here and called out the violations there. And we object and appeal you guys to deny the plan.
Well, I've had that opportunity, and I think all the other commissioners have as well.
Okay,
so thank you
fantastic.
very much, and appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next person that I see amongst the public that wants to speak on this subject, and this is the order they appear in Zoom, folks, so this is not a choice thing. Heidi Miller, you appear next on my Zoom list for somebody to speak. Do you want to speak on this particular project? Heidi Miller going once. Heidi Miller going twice. Okay, I'm sorry, Heidi, but if you want to raise your hand again, and I'll give you an opportunity if there's some technical issue going on, then I'm happy to address that. And I apologize, sir, if I mispronounced your name. I know you are also the husband of the woman from whom we just spoke, Mr. Sherlock Powell. Did you want to speak now? Hearing nothing. Are we having technical difficulties, do you think, folks, or?
Hold on.
Okay. So now,
welcome.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, Mr. White, Commissioner White. So I did send my letter, and I wanted to read out the letter as well. And I'm glad that every commissioner went through this. But for the purpose of the thing, there are a few points I just wanted to reiterate. So few things like, definitely I'm very concerned about my kids. And by the way, I did my bachelor's of architecture, and I know what architecture and what are the limitations, how to work through the plan. So any plan can be developed if the intention is to do that. And I'm, did bachelor of architecture. So all the codes and everything is going through proper knowledge, not like random. So definitely, the applicant has about 1.2 lot of acres of lot, and applicant could build as big as 6,000 square feet a house anywhere in the lot, but applicant chooses to propose a plan to build on disproportionate structure, that too by encouraging into setbacks on our side. This is completely highlighted the applicant that self-imposed. All these are self-imposed, does not justify the proposed changes. The proposed changes to an historic house clearly violates the norms of preserving historic property. Let me be clear on that one. So the 60 feet structure, applicant reduced to 1 feet. So it's 59 feet sitting in backyard, standing on this hill is really obstructive, and kids will feel every time kids go there, every 2 minutes, they will be watching up to see that, okay, if there is anybody watching them or not. That is something which I don't want my kids to go through, and not for the benefit of others, especially as a greed. I would say it's a desire and there is a greed. It crossed the level of greed and hurting us and our value and our lives. It's not acceptable. And, again, collecting signatures across people and forcing us to accept is not fair because it's hurting us. And desire is not bad, but if it hurts somebody else, and without their consent, is a harassment. And we are constantly going through this process for last 1 year, and it is not acceptable. It has to stop. And we want to live our lives. Not really think about always who is watching and who is encroaching and who is taking our things out. So please do the right thing, and we sincerely appeal to the commissioners to restrain to these repeated unjust requests, asking for more and more and more than what applicant is entitled to. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And to Heidi Miller, I did see your note that you're having some technical difficulties. So when those are resolved, raise your hand again and we'll get you back in the queue to talk. The next speaker that I see in the chat section here with a hand up is Ms. Tollner. You appear muted to us, Ms. Tollner.
How about now?
You sound great. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us talk. I'm actually here with my husband, Edic, and we're the neighbors directly across the street, the first neighbors that you see as you come up the driveway. We see Peter's place and the progress he's made. We've been watching him for the last couple of years. We knew the original owners of the property, and it's a beautiful old historic structure, but as we know, it was Peter had a love of it and he wanted to restore it, and I think that we believe the additions that he's included are really quite lovely and a nice complement to the property there. And but the homes are all pretty well spread out. We see each other, and I see my neighbors. I see the Millers. We see Peter. There's enough of a setback for all of our homes that there's plenty of privacy. So I don't understand this other neighbor's obsession with of utter and complete privacy. I mean, to some extent, we all see each other's homes. I can see their windows. I don't go around like any of us do, staring at each other's neighbors. So I find that a little ironic and weird personally, but I think Peter's done a beautiful job with the property, and we fully support the minor setbacks that he might require so that he can make this property a beautiful one, even more beautiful. And it sounds to me like he's made all of the sort of flexible adjustments that he could to satisfy this rather difficult neighbor. And my husband wants to say a word.
Yeah, this is Eric Sliva, 18230 Daves Avenue. I echo what Lisa said. Peter has done an incredible job with that property. We've been here over 20 years. We have seen it happen. But I also like to speak to 18290. These people have gone around and collected signatures on a false pretense from neighbors all over Monte Sereno. Some are friends, without even telling them what they're getting signature for. So I would be very careful about believing what you hear from them. Thank you.
Thank you. And you both finished your comments under 3 minutes, so that was really well done. We're actually improving as we go.
Thanks.
Thank you both. Okay, folks, some of you prefer to go by little code names. RS Zoom number 4. If you could state your real name, I assume you don't go by RS, and where you live, that would be helpful to get us started. You're muted to us. There you go.
Hello, is that me?
That is you. Welcome. Tell us your name and where you live, please.
It's Bernstein Nava. I live on Via Vaquero, 15440 Via Vaquero. And I actually have been at Rupa and Vasu's house, and I hate injustice. I honestly hate injustice. And I also like everybody to live peacefully. I like peaceful neighbors, that no one is arguing, but I understand that there's conflict of interest. So regarding the privacy issue, as I said, I've been at the, can you hear me? Can you still hear me?
We can hear you. We can hear you wonderfully. Please continue.
Okay, regarding the privacy, I've been at the house of 290 Daves Avenue, and I saw the tape, all the marking at the property. And imagine yourself down the hill and then a huge tall building just hovering on top of your house, just on right where your property line. That's how it felt. So I feel for Rupa and Vasu that somebody is really gonna build a huge massive building, tall, just above their property. And there's not much of a setback from their property line. Their pool is right there, their kids, their daughter. I would be concerned of whoever looked at my daughters swimming on my pool. I know you can have vegetation and built vegetation, but it's not the same. And I'm not sure how far you are supposed to, plant a tree. Tree is not permanent. So it's a huge visual impact on their property. And the previous neighbor that spoke said that they are complicated neighborhood, and I disagree. Actually, it's a bad mouthing about their nice family, and it is really, I see that privacy issue. It's just somebody over your house watching you. So that's the first thing. And the other thing is, if somebody bought a historic home, adobe home, to preserve, how is that building a huge, massive home is preserving the characteristic of adobe house and historic house? Also, if he gets the benefit of tax benefit from the city to build for his historic home, he's completely changing the historic home characteristic. So you get the tax benefit from having a historic home, and then you completely change the characteristic of the historic home by building a huge, massive 3-story house on just hovering on your neighbor. And that's basically, I hope the city will make the right decision for both of those neighbors. And I hope that the people from Dave's Avenue from 18 to 90 won't feel that it's invasive of their privacy.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your comments tonight. Ms. Miller, I see that you're back in the queue and you're telling me you may be ready, so we'd love to hear from you. You're muted. We can hear you now. Doesn't sound like a Heidi. Why don't you state your name and your address for me, please?
Sorry, we're having some technical issues here. Yeah, it's Patrick Miller. So we're dialing in on my wife Heidi Miller's technology here. So apologize for the back and forth. So we are at 18232 Dave's Avenue, one of the addresses referenced earlier. So for context, we are directly across a shared driveway from Peter's house. So I suspect we may be as close to his property as any other. And so the front of our house has direct line of sight to Peter's entire property and therefore the full view of this proposed project. So first, I wanted to say that we appreciate that Peter has taken the time to review his plans with us in great detail, including, by the way, the revisions that he's made based on the feedback that he's gotten throughout this process. And in addition, he also provided us access to the report, the staff report that was referenced earlier. So from our perspective, in looking at the details and taking the time with Peter to stand and assess the visual impact of the proposed addition from various angles on our property, we are completely comfortable with what is being proposed. I would echo Lisa's comments earlier that we've been impressed with what Peter has done in a very unique situation with what has already been acknowledged here. Tonight is obviously a very unique property. So we're in support of it. Happy to answer any questions or provide any other insights if helpful.
No, thank you very much for your comments, and thanks for your persistence in having the opportunity to speak to us. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right. Next on my chat list are both, oh, they just disappeared. Hold on. The LeBouvets. It says Daniel and Laura. I don't know if both of you are on the line, but some LeBouvet is going to get to talk next.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi. Yes, Mr. LeBouvet. Thank you. Welcome.
This is Daniel. So I was previously invited to tour the 18240 Daves Avenue property, including the main adobe structure, existing second-story addition, detached garage, and in-progress pool improvements. In my opinion, the current proposal does not adequately remedy the previous conclusions from the Site and Architecture Committee or the City Council. Specifically, the overall design is not consistent with Monte Sereno design guidelines when viewed from the neighbor side. By extending the second floor addition to the rear, the west, increasing the height and not incorporating any stepped elements, the addition has the look of a 3-story vertical structure on a prominent hillside and does not minimize visual impact or flow with the land. This violates Monte Sereno design guidelines 4A5, 4B3, and 4C1. The rear west 3-story vertical structure design invades neighbor privacy. This is especially concerning considering direct views into the neighbor pool area with teenage girls. This violates Monte Sereno design guideline 4A4 and common sense. The elevations, bulk, and privacy issues are reminiscent of the 17618 San Benito Way proposal that were opposed by immediate downhill neighbors on Via Sereno, including Mr. Mekachuk, and ultimately denied by the Site and Architecture Committee. The argument attempting to justify a variance is just nonsense. The property owner purchased the Adobe property and applied for and was granted historical status with all of the known limitations. The owner is attempting to build a shell around the Adobe structure to achieve the house that he really wants, but at the neighbor's expense. Councilmember Elahi concluded that historic structure should not be a sword to seek a variance. The existing property is already privileged with a variance for the existing second-story addition and substantial Mills Act tax incentives. The overall property has an abundance of space to remodel or build adjacent structures without impacting neighbors. The interior of the existing addition could be reconfigured to achieve the goal of an expanded kitchen. Councilmember Lutol suggested restoring the adobe structure as a standalone ADU and to build a main dwelling elsewhere on the property. Variance should be very rarely granted, and there is precedent for neighbor consent. The last 2 setback variances, one for a pool house and one due to a survey error, had neighbor support. The owner has an abundance of options to achieve his goals without impacting neighbors. I ask that you please deny the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next person in our participants list is NP. NP, if you will actually state your full name and your address, we would appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Nitin Prasad, and I'm a Monte Sereno resident. I live on 15011 Winchester Boulevard.
Welcome, Mr. Prasad. Proceed.
Okay, so I wanted to ask, I had raised my hand earlier because I'd received a question. I think you'd asked if someone had a question for Ms. Jeannie or Ms. Hamilton, so please raise your hand. So the question I had was basically how many pools are there in the city, because I'm mostly concerned about a pool. I have a pool in my house. I have high school kids. So let me just start. When does my time start? Please let me know.
Your time began, but I'm concerned about going down the pool route because a pool is not the subject of what we're approving tonight.
I understand.
Okay.
Okay. So, in this instance, the applicant, Mr. Gold, purchased this house in 2016, and they registered it as a historic house, and in return, so far, from my understanding, the county has paid him $100,000, right? That's post-tax, which probably 160,000 pre-tax, right? This pretty much offsets all the expenses that are listed in the proposal. And every single Monte Sereno resident would probably be happy to invest their own money in their property versus paying taxes, right? It's like complete, straight up, right? And then who will pay for the infrastructure or office employees and so many other things, right? Apart from that, now so Mr. Goal is enjoying all the benefits of the city, every single thing that all of us get. He's not asking for just a setback. And that's where my concern is. He's asking for a permission to violate, first of all, the historic preservation guideline, which he clearly mentions that there are no external scheme over there. I'm sorry, I'm losing, sorry, I lost my voice. And then this application also indirectly establishing a partner sort of in a grand scheme of tax evasion policy scheme of things that again is sort of a little concerning. And I cannot foresee any future future without a class action suit against the city. And we want to be very clear as to what we want to be part of and not be supportive. So now coming on to my most major concern here is I have a pool and my neighbor behind me is about 35 or 40 feet at an elevation. And he has his house built far away, meeting all the guidelines, so he does not have a view of my pool. If somebody were to build a house where in front of their window, they'd see my kids swimming in the pool, high school children, I'd be massively worried. And this is like a bully kind of thing, come back again and again and again and again. It's a little, awkward to hear another neighbor say this person went taking signatures. I mean, signing petitions now is the norm, right? And you can't expect people to sign petitions without knowing what they're signing for, right? And I'm guessing all people here are very well literate and know that what they're signing for. So I don't have any more comments, but if you were the person who was being impacted, any of you, what would you do? You're coming again and again, trying to prevent privacy concerns, trying to prevent your children. You go around asking neighbors for help, signatures, right? That's all I want to say. What else would you do?
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your comments tonight. Those of you letting me know that your hand is up, I appreciate that. There are a lot of people that want to speak, so we'll eventually get to you. Gordon Anderson, you are next on my list to speak if you're ready to participate with us tonight.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Great, yes. So Gordon Anderson, I live here with my wife, Andrea Anderson, on 18122 Via Encantada. So I listened to the discussion regarding this proposal back on, I think it was February 4th in a council meeting. And I think that debate and the subsequent denial actually raised a number of very valid points. A good summary of these was actually provided by Councillors Labouvet, who obviously just talked a minute ago, and Leuthold, which really centered around the overwhelming impact of the nature, the bulk and the location of the proposed structure when viewed from the neighbouring property in the downhill location. And I think that's really important here because I think the neighbours that are most seeing or feeling the impact are those in the downhill location. So I'd like to make two comments tonight. Firstly, I do note from the plans that the previously constructed patio, trellis, balcony that was built into the setback has been removed. I think that's good that that's been done so that the dining deck is now in compliance with the current setback rules. That said, replacing a patio, trellis and balcony with a solid building is a very different story. My second comment is that while I understand that the chosen location for the proposed development does make it difficult to design a meaningful space while staying within the design guidelines, especially the setbacks, that is true. That said, there do appear to be other opportunities to develop on the site. Some have already mentioned that there is actually other land obviously on the site, including the land at the curve of Dave's Avenue. While that might not be as desirable from the property owner's perspective, it does feel that we're sacrificing our Monte Sereno design guidelines and the impact on the downhill neighbour in order to satisfy the desires of the property owner. And frankly, with no other benefit to Monte Sereno. That doesn't really feel like an appropriate trade. Like some others who have mentioned, and just in closing, I have visited the site and viewed the proposed structure when the story calls were up a few months ago. It appeared huge and overly dominating from the downhill aspect. While I appreciate that plan modifications have been made to reduce the encroachment on the setback, these do not significantly alter the fact that when viewed from that downhill location by the pool, the structure is still oppressive and it will in fact adversely impact the downhill neighbours' enjoyment of their private land. That's a view that was also shared by Councillors Labouvet and Leuthold during that February 4th council meeting. And to me, at least, nothing substantive has changed in the plans that are being presented today that will alter that fact and should alter the decision to deny on February 20th. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Let's go with Kyra Sherlopale. Sure, I'm saying that wrong and I apologize.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, hi. So I live in 18290 Daves Avenue. And me and my friends normally go swimming in our pool, and I've seen the orange tape and everything. And one of the best things about my house that I really love is the openness and sunlight that can come in. But when they build a big wall there, I feel like that would overshadow our pool. And honestly, if my friends come, my house is where normally my friends come to congregate when we have our hangouts, and we normally go swimming. But when someone's there, as my father said earlier on in this meeting, I would be paranoid thinking someone was watching me every 2 minutes. I would keep looking up, and that would be really uncomfortable to myself and probably my friends. Also, Miss Tollner, I don't know who you are, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but have you come to our property to see it, like from our point of view? And I would appreciate if we could talk to all our neighbors, because I would really like people to see our point of view and see it from our property, how the wall looms over the pool, and I would feel very uncomfortable with that there. And that's all I have to say, but I would like for our neighbors to take into account to who we are as a family, and we're not some pushy neighbors. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. And to everybody that wants to speak, we're not speaking to other public commentators. We're speaking to the application before us. So please focus your comments on the application before us and not what others might have said. All right, Mr. Walsh, you're next up.
Unmute. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Welcome.
Great. I'll try to make this quick. You know, we've been through this. I don't live and I don't have a vested interest in Dave's Avenue. I live over on the other side on Elm Park Court. I went through this 4 years ago, and my comment to everyone is we should stick to the rules. We went through this. When there's changes in the city management and when there's changes in the architectural site and architectural commission, the only thing that keeps us, on the right path is sticking within the guidelines of the rules. 4 years ago, we were in the same situation where we were building on the uphill side of the slope, and we were actually told that no, we could not do that. We had to lower the home, and as a condition of closing out the permit, we actually had to build screening, had landscape screening installed and approved by the city. So I want to just say that like I said, I'll make this brief. I don't like the fact is that we're talking about variances and we're trying to get around these rules. Let's stick with the rules. That's what they're there for. They were very, very clear 4 years ago about sticking with the slope of the existing land and how we should be building it to stick within that structure. So please do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Sorry. All right, the Millers are the last remaining hand again, unless they've already spoken. I'll give them another opportunity. There must be another Miller there that wants to talk. Muted. Will the real Heidi Miller please speak? So Heidi, if that's you, we can't hear you because you're muted.
How about that? Can you hear me?
Okay, we hear you, but we already heard from you, so you don't get 2 bites at the apple.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was being called on here. Is that not what's happening?
Well, didn't we already hear from you?
You did.
All righty. Well, thank you. Thank you for your comments. That's
You
all you
got it.
get. I'm sorry. If we go
Okay.
around in circles, if that were the case.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for your, and everybody who participated tonight in the public comment aspect of the meeting. Thank you very much. And everybody's patience and civility. I appreciate that. I would like to give the applicant and his architect, Mr. Meinwieser, an opportunity to provide a rebuttal, and then we're going to bring it back to the commission for discussion. And then I would suggest that we maybe take a break for everybody, and then we'll continue with the next item on the agenda. All right, having said that, Mr. Gold and Mr. Meinwieser, are you guys available to speak with us now?
This is Peter. I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you, Mr. Gold. And Mr. Meinwieser, you're
Thank
muted, but otherwise I see your presence. Any rebuttal or comments in response to the public comment or other items that you'd like us to consider that were not originally addressed?
Yeah, sure. I just want to make a comment that the staff report was carefully reviewed by the city planner, the city attorney, and the city manager. And I believe, and I think my architect will echo this, that there are no violations to any codes or any laws of any kind being made in my proposal. The second thing is that, I did attempt to minimize my proposal, so I do not feel it's huge, as that has been mentioned a few times during the comment. In fact, I downsized it considerably from what was previously recommended and what was previously presented. I have made every attempt to protect the privacy of the downslope property. I believe also that I've proven through the line of sight drawings that there is no physical view, and nor do I desire to have a physical view or intrude upon anybody's privacy, and I certainly would like to have my own privacy. If there are additional steps that I can take, I'd like to understand what those are so that I can take that into account. And then lastly, and I had a very nice meeting with Daniel the other day after a city council meeting earlier in the year. And he was here for about an hour and a half, and we spent considerable time talking through the project. And my recollection of how the outcome of that discussion was that he was supportive of the first floor as it was originally presented, which was more expansive than what I have been being presented today, and that there was a reasonable justification to continue the second story line along with the existing second story, which is essentially what I'm doing. So I'm not taking advantage of the city. I think there was a comment made about that. I do believe that there's perhaps a misunderstanding on perhaps of the lower downslope property owner as far as property height, and I would ask my architect to address that. Thank you.
Okay, hopefully I am unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, good. I also wanted to address a couple of things. Previously in one of the meetings, I think it was here, I pointed out on the existing site plan, the existing floor plan, I guess that's sheet A4, how there used to be, until very, very recently, a trellised patio outside of the third bath and the laundry room with a door accessing them, because the former homeowner had parties and dining things out there and so on. So one of the first things we did was we took all of that away. In addition to taking the rooms themselves away, we took the outside part away. Our point being that we would be removing any outside activities from that whole left side of the house. So there's no reason to go back there anymore except to maintain the plants. And another thing I wanted to point out is that one of the people was seemingly saying that the tax benefits really only reside with Peter, with Mr. Gull. However, the whole point of the Mills Act is that the money from that savings is to be plowed back into the house. And I want to tell you that he's already done that. He did some extensive foundation repairs in the back, including a new grade beam and piers that was in the neighborhood of $30,000 or more. He did a seismic upgrade to the entire house, wherein they ripped the roof off, opened up everything, and drilled rods down into every wall to seismically reinforce the building so that it wouldn't fall down in an earthquake. That was very expensive. And finally, when they were done, they put new sheer plywood over the entire roof and then a new roofing over the entire roof so that the entire roof structure is also reinforced and will be good for another 30 years. So he has done exactly what this state tax act is recommending that he do, and that is to put the money back into the house. And I think that's it for now.
Good, because time's expired. Well done. And I don't think for everybody, we're not evaluating the merits to compliance with the Mills Act, or that's not before us tonight. So comments about that have not particularly been helpful tonight. We are here to look at this from the applicant's request for us to evaluate both a variance, a request for a special use permit, and a request for a site development permit. And with public comment closed, which I'm going to do now, I'm closing public comment, just making sure there's nobody else out there that didn't get a chance to speak. Seeing none, perfect. I'm bringing it back to us, commissioners, for evaluation of those three items. And I thought Mr. Wade's remark earlier was pretty spot on. I think the variance is the place we need to start. And I ask you guys if the findings that you see in the staff report, and they're specifically found in the very last paragraph to the staff report in relationship to consideration of the variance, whether those exist and whether folks feel like they could support a motion to approve a variance with this particular project. With that, I turn to you guys for comment. Does anybody want to speak?
Jeannie Hamilton, city planner, would actually like to address a couple comments that were made in the course of the public comments.
Okay, fair enough. Sorry, guys.
I just wanted to respond to some comments related to there's a lot of open land where the applicant could build maybe another home and use the existing historic home as the ADU. Unfortunately, it exceeds the maximum square footage limit of that. So that is not an opportunity, as well as, again, I think as was expressed by the architect previously, there are not just the exterior integrity of the historic structure, but the interior integrity, in that there are the adobe walls and the layout, which offer additional limitations relative to practical expansion of the floor space to bring this home up to more current living standards. You know, just like what we were seeing with the previous project, Elm Park, you do have some older homes. They need to be brought up to the standards. Unfortunately, this one does have the historic internal integrity constraints also. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton.
And I'll just clarify on the ADU issue. State law limits the maximum size of what can be an ADU. So basically, no detached ADU can be bigger than 1,200 square feet. So since the existing structure is bigger than that, then that just rules that out as a possibility.
Thank you, Mr. Redeem. Okay, I think with comments from City Council and the City Planner, if those are all done, then it's back in our lap, folks. I would like to take up the variance issue first, if you guys are okay with that.
Yes, that's exactly what I wanted to do, so go.
Well, tell me your guys' thoughts. I think that this is a very unique property. And the reason why I asked how many historical properties there were in the city is because I think they should be given unique handling. And this is a property that was the subject of our critique over a year ago. And when I look at the various plans, and I should add, and all of you should add, to the extent that you've been on any of the properties nearby, we should all disclose that. And I will tell you that I met with Mr. Goal in June, I think, of this year at his property and got a tour of it. And I had a pretty good idea of it. And I've subsequently been up there since the story poles were placed up there to get an idea of how much lower they appear now as opposed to when we were evaluating this over a year ago. So when you guys get an opportunity to speak, please disclose to folks where you've been and who you've talked to about this project. But in any event, I think to finish my comments, it's a very unique property. There are very few of these that come around. I think it has to be handled with kind of a different set of guidelines, and a variance may be appropriate here for this particular applicant to essentially achieve the benefits of property ownership in our city that might not otherwise be available to him if this wasn't a historical property. And I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are.
Well, I'll speak to that. I can totally appreciate the difficulties in trying to upgrade this house to modern standards, considering the restraints or constraints with the historical structure. I know the architect and owner have gone to great lengths to minimize the footprint and minimize impact on the downhill neighbor. As I mentioned the last go around, I'm not against the variance at the first floor, but I was really hoping to see the second floor pulled back to meet that 20-foot setback in this round. I totally get how hard it would be with the stairwell and all that. Very challenging, but that's just the name of the game here in designing any addition to a home like this. And I'm kind of, wrestling, I guess, with it. I go back to what Mr. Walsh said, stick to the rules. The rules are the rules, whether we like them or not. And the variances that are proposed in and of themselves are not that large. But the fact is, on a hillside property, it's magnified, especially from the viewpoint of the neighbor below. And we're talking 18 inches, 19 inches at the first floor, at the offending corner. That's how much over we are. And upstairs, we're about 2 foot 10 1/4 inches. If those were brought back in line, I don't think it would be any less imposing to the neighbor below, but it would fit the setbacks, and I would be for it, without a doubt. It's just, due to the circumstances here, I would find it hard to grant the variance for the second floor encroachment into the 20-foot setback.
Those are exactly my thoughts. The first floor, I'm fine with. The second floor, as you said, there's just like a couple of feet that if you could do it and then it would meet the setbacks, I'd be fine. I have a tough time with the second floor setback.
The first, may I speak? With respect to disclosures, I will disclose that I was at the property prior to joining site architecture and prior to when the applicant brought this to site architecture, I think in November. And Peter met me outside and he said, sort of, who are you? Are you one of the commissioners? And I said, no. And I said, but I'm going to be in the future. And he said, oh, okay. And we were talking and he said, let me show you the inside of the house. And I was just astounded as to what a treasure it is as an adobe house and the historic value. So those are my disclosures. And I also went down and viewed from the swimming pool that the neighbor had spoken of. And I tried to also meet there again today, but that was not convenient for them. So those are my disclosures. Then I'd like to say that I found it important to hear from the architect, Mr. Meinwieser, and how he said that they had to move the addition over to the far end of the property to maintain as much of the adobe structure so that you couldn't see it. And it's visually, it's all on the other side. So I understand that constraint. With respect to the changes and the second story setback, I think that that's appropriate. I think that while I appreciate, quote, the rules, I also believe that you've got to do everything that's feasible. And it's not like it's egregious. It's not like he's intending to go into that. It's just required to make the project work. And I commend him for taking all of the feedback and incorporating that in his project and delaying it. And I think that to save a house like that is a good thing. And I do think the changes from what came before site and architecture was that when I was on site and architecture to now are significant, and they're not de minimis. So as far as the variance goes, I would be supporting the variance.
Okay, I'll go next. I've been to the property 3 times. The first time it came through Sarton Architecture, I viewed it from the outside. I also viewed it from the neighbor's pool deck. The second time I met with Peter was in June, and I went through the house and got a tour. And like those of you that have been in the house, was kind of blown away with the amount of time and money that Peter has spent to keep this adobe home going, and in ways that don't visually show. So it's not like he gets to take those Mills Act funds and put it into aesthetics. It's more about keeping the structure intact. And then the third time was just, I met Peter at his house and wanted to view it from the outside and from the property line before this meeting. I'm really torn. I know variances are not given out lightly, and I know that there have been a lot of exceptions already to this property, but I'm leaning towards being in favor of giving it to him at this point. I feel like he's made a lot of concessions to make it work and to protect the neighbor from the visual view into their yard. He's obscured windows, he's taken balconies off, he's minimized a lot. And I also feel that screening from both neighbors can really minimize the view into that pool deck area. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I think the question that Mr. Wade, you're quite the guy with the good questions tonight, but I'm going to cite you again. I guess the area that is objected to by the neighbors, I have a tough time believing that that would be any less imposing if they were 2 feet back into the setback. I think the same complaints would be made about this property, and we would just be talking about how to screen that and not even have a variance before us. And I appreciate the remarks about following the rules. That's why we have rules. It makes things a lot easier if everybody followed the rules. So I'm also honestly on the fence. Those are my concerns. I do think this property does warrant being handled a little differently than anything else because of its unique historical character. And as the staff report reflects, the applicant has gone to extraordinary lengths to make everybody around him happy. There are just an impossibility circumstance here with the neighbor on the lower slope. If somebody wanted to entertain a motion to approve the variance, I'll be here that right now. either one, Heather or Brian.
I want to just kind of add to what you said there.
Sure.
And what you said was, even if this thing, was within the setbacks, suppose we did pull the second floor in that 30 or 20, what is it? 34 inches. I kind of think we wouldn't be in too different of a spot in terms of the privacy issue. I can see an opportunity here for them to shove that master bathroom out another 8 feet and, to all the way out to that 20-foot setback, which would be even more imposing, but within the rules. So that's where I'm kind of wrestling with. I mean, they could stick to the rules and make this thing a whole lot more objectionable to the downhill neighbor, in which point I would say, the rules are the rules, tough luck kind of thing. So yeah, I'm wrestling with it also. I'm kind of, wagging back and forth on this one. He's done a lot of work to minimize the impact to the neighbor below. And he could stay within the rules and make it a whole lot worse. Is kind of my point here.
Understood. Anybody else? Heather?
Just to be clear on we have to go through a justification of why we're gonna, if we should choose to go down the path of approving the variance, and the justification would be the historic nature of the home and the constraints surrounding that premise. And do we all feel like, well, I guess we're gonna have some difference in opinions and totally go with your conscience on whatever we decide here, but that would, and correct me if I'm wrong, that would be the premise of allowing a variance if we should go down that route. Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Well, let's be clear about what we're doing tonight. So
we're recommending to the city council.
We're only recommending to the city council. This is not the final by any means. And what we're effectively recommending is that the city approve the variance due to special circumstances related to the topography of the site and the location of the existing historic structure, which both circumstances limit the opportunities to expand the living area enjoyed by other properties located in the same zoning district with the same general area discussed above. And then we're to follow the language of Government Code 65906 and Section 10.10020 of the City of Monte Sereno Municipal Code, which defines the variance appropriate or shall be granted only when, because of special circumstances applicable to the property, including size, shape, topography, location, or surroundings, the strict application of the zoning ordinance, the rules about which we've spoken, deprives the property owner of the privileges enjoyed by other property in the vicinity and under an identical zoning classification. That's what we're having to decide. And I think this is a really tough one. I don't have any problem with anything that anybody has said tonight, including all of the public comments. But I think it's a unique property and it should be treated as such. So much so that I would support a variance if somebody made the motion.
Yeah.
I went through those comments that you just read at the top of page 7 of the staff report regarding the variance. And I can make those findings, so I would like to put forward a motion to approve the variance using the language and the findings that we have to make as set forth on the top of page 7.
Mr. Radin, I hate to wake you from whatever's going on, but is that an adequate motion? Thank you, Brian.
I would say that it is.
Okay.
I think the motion is to recommend approval of the variance as proposed by the applicant, and recommend that the city council adopt the findings as set forth in the staff report on page 7.
So much better said. Thank you, Mr. Radin. Okay, anybody want to second that motion?
I will second it.
Okay. With a roll call, Ms. Hamilton, we can go through the variance issue now.
Okay, Commissioner Mikachek,
Aye.
Commissioner Kroc,
Aye.
Commissioner Wade, Commissioner
Aye.
Wade,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrington,
Aye.
Chairperson White.
Aye. Okay,
So
so
that motion passes 5-0.
great. Thank you, everybody. And it's a tough call, folks, but we're only making a recommendation to the city, and hopefully people can do some better homework than that which we have before us if there's some reasons to reconsider. All right,
Again,
now we're going to move to the request for a special use permit. And in relationship to this particular aspect of the application, we need to make the findings that exist in section 12.01.110 of the City of Monte Sereno Municipal Code, many of which I believe you'll see here in pages 7 through 8 of the staff report. Am I saying that correctly, Ms. Hamilton? I don't want to.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, the findings that we're making in relationship to the special use permit, those are what are codified in section 12.01.110 of the municipal code for the city.
Correct. And, you know, I was walked through them beginning on page 7 as to how through staff's analysis, what I found in relationship to what we need to find.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. So this one I think is an easier call. I think actually the other matters is also an easier call than the variance. I do believe that the proposed work is consistent with the purposes and objectives of Chapter 12 of the municipal code, that the proposed work does not adversely affect the character or integrity of the design feature, that the proposed work will not result in significant environmental impact that cannot be mitigated. And in the case of new construction of a new building, structure or other improvement upon or within a designated feature, the exterior of such improvement will not adversely affect and will be compatible with the external appearance of the existing feather. This is an addition.
That should be feature.
Yeah, I'm like,
I was wondering where we're getting feathers.
I didn't want to ask what the feather was.
Construction term. We're getting very detailed. Comments from the commissioners. I think those findings can be made personally. I'm curious what other commissioners feel.
I agree.
I think they all can be made.
Yeah.
Yes, I would agree also.
Okay, then I'm going to move that the request for a special use permit be approved as the findings required by section 12.01.110 of the municipal code for the city of Monte Sereno exist. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And folks, if I may interject briefly, with respect to the special use permit and the site development permit, that is the opportunity for the commission, if it so chooses, to consider conditions of approval with respect to the project, for the special use permit, conditions relating to historical preservation, et cetera, with the site development permit, probably all other conditions with respect to aesthetics and, general project conditions. So I know that Ms. Hamilton has prepared draft recommended conditions of approval. So if the commission wants to include recommendations to condition approval of those two permits, along with those conditions of approval, that would also be appropriate for you folks to consider at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Udine. I would amend my motion only to augment it by inclusion of the conditions in the memorandum of decision that Ms. Hamilton shared with us in advance of this meeting that has those general conditions about which Mr. Udine was talking. I think when we get to the request for site development permit, there might be an opportunity for people to talk a little bit more about screening, which from neighbors and privacy. So I'm not going to include that in this particular motion, but that'll be up next for us to consider when we get to the site development permit. So with my motion so augmented, is there a continued second there, Ms. Harrington?
Yes.
Okay. And if Ms. Hamlins could take a roll call and a vote for that, we can move to the last item.
Okay, Commissioner Wade.
Aye.
Commissioner Mikachek.
Aye.
Commissioner Kroc.
Aye.
Commissioner Harrington.
Aye.
Chairperson White.
Yes.
Okay, that motion to recommend approval passes 5-0.
Okay, guys, then the last item that we're to evaluate and decide tonight is the request for a site development permit. And this is the purview that we're ordinarily accustomed to seeing when we see applications before us. These are the various factors that are codified in section 10.08.050, capital B of our municipal code. Generally the design guidelines about which we're all familiar. And to Mr. Redeem's point, I do have some concerns about the screening. I want to minimize the impact on the property owner below as much as possible. I defer to my other commissioners and maybe some input from Ms. Hamilton about how best that can be achieved in the form of a motion that we could actually entertain and consider. But first, the commissioners, do you guys have any thoughts on that subject?
I do. I'm not seeing a landscape plan per se. So I'm not seeing any defined screening being installed beyond what is already there. I did, there is that line of Prunus carolina kind of planted along the property line. It's pretty far down though. And even when those trees are mature, I'm not sure how much screening they're going to provide, starting so far down the slope there. So that was one comment I had. Then I was also thinking it would be reasonable on sheet A 8.0, the rear west section elevation. On the second story windows that are the second floor master bedroom looking out the back of the house, I think it would be reasonable to raise the sill of those up a little bit, decrease the size of them effectively so that the sill of that window was in alignment with the other two windows on the left side there that are part of the bathroom jut out. I can't point at anything, so I can't, hopefully that makes sense.
You're looking at the CC detail, Steve?
No, it's a DD.
DD, okay.
Which is the rear west elevation.
Okay.
If you look at the second story there, there's a little, there's three windows effectively on the second story.
Right.
The two that have the little arrows pointing to them with the window call out, those are the master bathroom windows. Or they're by the tub and the little like lavatory there, or makeup counter or whatever you want to call it. The other three to the right, or that group of three windows, has a lower sill than the rest of them.
Well, and the sill appears to be like 2 feet from the finished floor, right?
Something like that, yeah.
They're very low.
Yeah, they are quite low, and I think bringing that sill up and decreasing the size of those windows would afford a little more privacy for the downhill neighbor without significantly reducing the view from that master bedroom.
Aren't those windows opaque or frosted as?
No, only the ones on the other
I think
elevation.
just the ones on the side.
May I interrupt for a moment?
Yeah.
I believe those are existing windows. Those
No.
are not new.
That's not correct. No, this is the new addition. The second floor addition, where it says proposed addition. It's right within those dimension lines there.
Okay, could you obscure the lower parts of those windows and leave the sill height the same? and that would give the privacy, but it would also maintain the lightness inside the room, which is an energy saving feature.
That would be odd to have windows with some panels opaque and some clear.
Okay, I have a question. Why would that make it more private? Because it would be like a 2-foot tall person who could look out those bottom frames. I'm not quite sure why that would give more privacy.
Well, looking down the slope at an angle, depending upon where you're standing in the room, if you look at the line of sight angle, it basically brings the line of sight.
Okay.
It swings it up. So you have to get much closer to the window to see further down the hill.
Okay, my thought on this, and this is why I voted for the variance, is that a master bedroom bathroom, somebody's in it at 7 o'clock in the morning and then doesn't go back in until going to bed at 10 or whatever. Nobody's even in there during the day. So that's why I'm not that concerned about it.
I see, yeah.
I mean, when they're, nobody's going to be in there looking down at the neighbor's house. It's not like it's a family room. So I guess that's why I'm not that concerned about the privacy issue from the master bedroom, because nobody's in there during the day.
Or do we require some sort of tree feature at that corner, the corner in question of the property, some fast going or large size tree to go in there, as well as the perimeter screening that he already has that would kind of filter the view downhill?
That would be another way to filter the view. That seems reasonable also.
I could support either, and then we maybe could condition it in the alternative, one or the other.
So what I'm hearing is you guys are thinking through a special condition that would require landscaping between the property line and the proposed addition, so some interim screening landscaping.
Yes, something further up the hill, closer to the house, I think would be more beneficial to the planting that's occurred down the hill quite a bit on the property line.
At the property line, okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's a large tree there already, which I think he's keeping. I know he's keeping, but I don't see it on the plan, so it's hard to really get a feel for how.
Were provided by the applicant show the tree. Let's see.
I guess you can see it on the civil plan, the second sheet, A2.0. You can see the existing tree there, but I'm thinking of something closer to the new corner.
Yeah, I'm thinking of something closer to the new corner as well.
All right, how do we phrase that?
Can we condition it that the applicant provide some sort of screening tree at the nearest most corner to the adjacent property in question, and Jeannie staff can have the discretion of what that might be?
Yes.
Well, I think, yeah, and what I think you would do would be, be as specific as practical, because you're, again, recommending this to the city council. Right. So it's really the council
are we on
through that.
On this portion, isn't this a site and architecture approval? The only thing, aren't we just recommending the other stuff to the city council? Isn't this
no, all of them when there's a request that is to be acted on by the council, when it's coupled with other applications, they all go to the council and you recommend on all of them.
Okay.
So this one goes along. So your recommendation would be that, with, standard and special conditions, that special condition would be, to augment the landscaping to provide screening, more specifically at the closest corner, not just at the property line, but interim to that new construction and the property line to provide sufficient screening between the two properties.
Could we say something like a minimum of 2 48-inch box native species trees?
You could
Yes,
say
you absolutely
yes.
could.
Mhm.
I'd be okay with something like that.
Sounds like you want to make a motion.
Okay, so boy, so how do I, so I make a motion that we approve the, this is the site development, right? Yeah,
Right.
no, yeah, site development portion of the project with the condition that 2 48-inch box native species trees be planted to improve screening at the corner of the new addition. Something.
And that otherwise all the findings required of us under section 10.08.050B have been made.
And that too.
I would second that motion.
Okay, roll call. Commissioner Kroc,
Aye.
Commissioner Mekachek,
Aye.
Commissioner Wade,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrington,
Aye.
Chairperson White.
Aye.
Okay, that motion to recommend approval with standard and special condition, that special condition be to plant 2 48-inch box trees of native species to be planted at the corner of the new addition between it and the property line to enhance screening. That motion passes 5-0.
Okay, Ms. Hamilton, I think everybody would like to take a brief break. I'll defer to you as to how long that should be. I know a lot of people are waiting to hear the next matter and final matter on our agenda tonight, and I know I don't want to keep them any longer than we have to.
How about a 5-minute break?
Sure.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you, folks. We're recessed for 5 minutes.
Okay.
All right, we're starting. Where'd you go? We're gonna start our last item in 5 minutes. Probably at least an hour and a half.
But you know, like some sort of hanging there. Looks really nice.
Just up yours. I'll pour you off the beer and bring it to you. You will. Wednesday. I moved some of the boxes into the garage. Supposed to be out next Wednesday. And keep 2 more bags.
I don't hear you.
I think it looks fine.
All right, folks, you ready to get started again? Great. Great. As soon as Jennifer gets seated, we'll go.
Okay, I'm here.
Welcome back.
Cool.
Yeah. Progress is being made.
Yeah, awesome.
All right, Mr. Udine, you are unmuted.
The laundry still feels like it might be slightly down, so I'm gonna leave it for another day.
And learning about your laundry is helpful, but let's mute. Ms. Hamilton, everybody ready?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. If you could introduce our final item on the agenda tonight, I'd be very appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, before you tonight is a application for a tentative parcel map to subdivide an existing 0.96 acre parcel into 4 lots, including 3 single-family lots served by a private cul-de-sac as a separate lot. Subject site is designated single-family residential, 3 dwelling units per acre on the city's land use diagram, and zoned R18 single-family residential, consistent with the land use designation. As outlined in the staff report, on September 21st of this year, 2020, Monte Sereno City Council voted to enter into a settlement agreement with the property owner at 18081 Saratoga Los Gatos Road. It deems the previous application for a tentative subdivision map, which was TM 1701, as resubmitted, which is why this application is before you. The proposal as put forth and discussed in the staff report is 4 lots, but it's 3 residential lots. Again, this is a site that has an average slope of 10% or greater. It's a little over 13%, which causes the minimum lot sizes for any subdivision to happen to be, I think I put it on page 9, to be over 10,000 square feet. So it doesn't just have to meet the minimum lot size of the R18 because of the slope density formula, again, which we discussed with the previous. These have to meet a little over 10,315 square feet. On page 7, you'll see that lot 1, they're all over 11,000 square feet. Lot 1's 11,665, lot 2, 11,756, and lot 3, 11,761. So they are in excess of the minimum required for the slope density formula. Again, as part of the subdivision regulations, when serving more than 2 lots, you'll need a access road, a minimum width of 40 feet. This private cul-de-sac, as proposed, meets that minimum width, as well as a fire truck turnaround consistent with the Santa Clara County Fire Department's specifications. The general plan policies that this subdivision complies with, I've walked through many of them starting on page 2 relative to land use policies and on to page 5. As to consistency with guidelines, there's that proposed subdivision is consistent with the character of the larger Rose Andrews neighborhood. There are several small cul-de-sacs that you'll find throughout the neighborhood, as well as directly across Highway 9, serving, 3 to 10 lots. So the pattern of development is consistent with the pattern that you see in the neighborhood. The proposed building envelopes, there are some special requirements that go along with the layout of the subdivision, especially if you're going to have some pie-shaped lots. They do have they do meet the minimum lot frontage because they are allowed to go down to 50% of what otherwise would be required, which is 70 feet. But because of that, as you can see on page 9, there is a need to push the building envelopes back. So again, the proposed subdivision recognizes those and is prepared to meet those regulations. The existing lot is, the proposed subdivision would really help to address a lot of the drainage issues that currently exist with the existing lot. If you look on page 10, at the bottom, you'll see that the current lot configure, grading, the front quarter of the lot drains to Highway 9 and the remainder sheet flows down to the back of the lot and just goes where it can go. As part of the subdivision, the drainage will be designed, as you can see on page 11, so that really 2/3 of the drainage flow will be captured and moved out towards Highway 9, and anything to the rear of lots 2 and 3 will be captured into detention basins, and it'll dissipate, or if not, pumped. It's been designed for over 100-year flood event that it can get pumped to the front. So any existing drainage issues that might affect adjacent properties will be addressed through the design of the subdivision. The other special issue associated with subdivisions along a scenic corridor, which is what Highway 9 is there will be, and although you're not dealing directly with it right now, there is a height limitation which restricts the height of any future construction on these newly created lots to 15 feet above the existing natural grade of each of the individual lots, whether or not you're going to do any grading or not. So you take that high point, and I think I point that out on page, sorry, let me find it here. But it will limit it to, on page 13, it limits it to, an actual elevation. So should this subdivision get approved when subsequent development comes through, that height limitation will be enforced on any new home construction. As part of the previous application that went through the process, the council did approve a mitigated negative declaration as well as the associated mitigation monitoring and reporting program that goes along with it. So as far as CEQA compliance, we would recommend that the existing adopted MND and MMRP be recognized for this project, as there are no differences in this application versus the previous. So again, as I set out in the staff report, as far as conformance with city general plan goals and policies, density, zoning regulations, and subdivision regulations, staff would recommend that the Site and Architectural Commission recommend that the City Council approve the tentative parcel map, and that this subdivision is consistent with all of those goals and policies in the general plan, the land use designation, and the development standards of the zoning district and the slope density requirements, and meets all applicable requirements of the city's subdivision regulations. And with that, I'm available for questions.
I have a question. Okay, so with the height requirements, does this mean a 1-story or possibly 2-story?
Given the lot configuration, it might be a challenge on any single lot to put a 2-story home. You could potentially dig the house down, put a basement level, maybe a daylight basement. I'm not a designer. It would be a challenge to have a 2-story home with that elevation restriction. But again, others can be creative, yes.
Okay, my second question is, if we approve well, I know we're not actually approving it. If we recommend, if it gets approved, does this mean that there will be this subdivision, or could someone say, you know what, I want to do a single family home on the whole thing? Does it make it a subdivision in perpetuity?
The process that is going through now is a tentative parcel map. If the council were to approve this tentative parcel map, another process still has to occur before the subdivision is final. It's a final map process. So if that happens, then there is a final map.
So once it's a subdivision, it is a subdivision. No,
yeah, unless somebody wants to do a reversion to acreage, or re-subdivide to 2 lots or something. I mean, again, a lot of different things could potentially happen in the future, but what needs to make it a 3-lot subdivision would be the first step of approval of the tentative map, parcel map, and then them going through, which is the final map process, which is more of a ministerial process, and then it's just to find that final map with all the detailed requirements of a final map are consistent substantially in conformance with the tentative map approved.
Okay.
So yes.
bottom line, if it gets completely approved, there is no going back.
No, no. Someone could decide to never build on 3. They could come back and say, you know, I've got this big lot of land. Yeah, it's subdivided into 3, but I want to re-subdivide it into 2. Again, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but they could, you know. Some people could buy up 4 lots and decide to revert it all to a single. They could get rid of all the lot lines.
Well,
and they could go to, yeah.
Okay, because I didn't know that once with the state wanting to make as many, you know, homes as possible, once we do this, I just wanted to know if it was ever possible to go
Well,
back.
and this one, again, that they could go back to possibly 2 lots because that would be consistent with the general plan land use designation too. So 2 or 3 would be consistent because our designation is 3 to 5 dwelling units per acre. So.
Okay, thank you.
Jeannie, I have a question as well. In the various findings that we need to make in order to approve this map or make a recommendation to approve this map, one is deals with the scenic corridor. And my question is the landscape plan that appears as L1 at the final sheet of the set that we received, is that something that we're considering tonight?
That proposed landscape plan was part of the environmental review. So again, you know, that or that's what the aesthetics was based on. So we would be looking to that, or if, yeah, I mean, that's was part of the environmental review. So though that landscape plan is reflected in the aesthetics analysis, and there were some photo sims done that reflect that landscape plan. So when this would come up for development, we would condition that the landscaping be done per that plan, or if there were any modifications, that it was in substantial conformance or any changes would not be any different than the aesthetics that were reviewed and considered through the environmental review process.
Understood. And then the final question, just to make sure everybody's clear, we are not approving any sort of structures whatsoever in conjunction with this map analysis.
Correct.
Approval other than those related to drainage, those either subterranean or you know, on grade drainage features that are shown in the plans.
Yes, and again, it's really the map that you're recommending approval of. The other stuff, there might be some minor refinements as you work through an improvement plan or whatnot. But again, the reason we have them submitted at the tentative map stage is to really help to understand how that subdivision and all the grading and drainage would work. So.
Great, I think that's helpful. And to my fellow commissioners, if you review the proposed resolution, the findings on pages 2 and 3 are essentially where our focus should be tonight. Anybody else have any questions for Ms. Hamilton? Okay, well, we're going to give the applicant an opportunity to speak. And I see from my chat, I think there's counsel here on behalf of Ms. Seaborn. In addition to Ms. Seaborn, counsel's asking for the opportunity to speak as well. I'm going to stick to the same parameters that I gave everybody in the prior matters that we reviewed tonight. 10 minutes for the applicant, 3 minutes for public comment from each member of the public that wants to speak, and then the applicant have an opportunity to rebut for 5. So however, Ms. Seaborn and Mr. Ramakrishnan, hope I pronounced that correctly, probably did not, want to divide their time, I'm fine with it, but they've got 10 minutes between themselves. So with that said, Mr. Ramakrishnan, your mic is not on. I can't select you. And Ms. Seaborn, you're disappeared on me. Oh, there you are. You're both in. Okay. Annette, you're muted, and Eric, you're muted. So whoever wants to speak first, unmute yourself and have at it. Or just so you guys know, we're not hearing you. I'm not counting the 10 minutes, but I need to hear from somebody.
There we go. Did that work? Can you hear me now?
We can. Thank you. Welcome.
Oh, yay. Thank you. Sorry, technology.
No, I know the same challenges.
There we go. This is my first time doing this, so thank you for your patience.
No problem.
Okay. Well, good evening, Chairperson White and the Site and Architecture Commissioners, and thank you for your time tonight. I'm going to try to keep it short because Jeannie just did a great job going through everything, so I'll skip some of the redundant stuff. But my name is Annette Seaborn, and I'm the principal and sole owner of Seaborn Development, LLC. I'm here tonight as a volunteer to present the application for a tentative parcel map, a 3-lot subdivision and private road. This project is recommended by the city staff planner and is fully compliant with Monte Sereno guidelines, the city general plan, zoning, land use designations, and municipal codes. This project meets or exceeds Monte Sereno regulations and objective standards. Oh, sorry, I forgot to push the button. As a real estate professional and local Los Gatos realtor at Coldwell Banker, currently ranked #2 individual, I'm an area specialist for Los Gatos and Monte Sereno. The yellow dots demonstrate on the homes sold in Los Gatos, Monte Sereno, and the red dots are pending. As a successful real estate professional, my mission is simple: to be of service to others and to create beauty. This project serves both aspects, creating much needed housing for our community in the most beautiful way possible. More specifically, creating beautiful homes for Monte Sereno and make our scenic highway truly scenic again. Tonight, I ask for a recommendation to the City Council of Monte Sereno and respectfully ask for your support in recommending approval for this application. In 2015, the original house was destroyed in a fire. This property has been vacant ever since. The plants that survived the fire are mostly dead from lack of water and care. Vandalized over the years, this property is blight to the neighborhood and a community eyesore. It's time to change that. So I'm just going to briefly go through some photos. This one, you can see that there's kind of a big hump there, and I'll be talking about that later. This is looking towards Highway 9. That's some artwork. These are some nice visuals so you can see looking down the lack of significant trees. This is Monte Sereno's rural scenic character. So this is today's scenic corridor at 1808 that I'm hoping to improve. This project restores the scenic corridor. That's an example of the plants that have been designed for this project. Those green kind of Christmas tree things, they look like they're perfect there because they are, and they don't grow any more than that top power lines, which was planned. So it also makes it beautiful again. So this map demonstrates the neighborhood compatibility. Green stars demonstrate complying zoning. The property in yellow is clearly the R8. That's the property in question. And the zoning minimum is 8,000 square feet. The properties listed in red represent lot sizes under today's zoning requirements. Across the highway, Highway 9, we move into R20 lot zoning for 20,000 square foot lots, and most fall under zoning minimums. Oops, before I go on, the red question mark as seen on Arley Court shows lots that include the road, making the lot sizes even smaller. That's directly behind the property. The tentative parcel map application today exceeds minimum requirements by 50% with large 11,000 plus square foot lots and is compatible with the Rose Avenue neighborhood. Also included is an 8,000 square foot private drive with a full fire truck turnaround for safety concerns. The Gold star here represents the location of the property. There are 9 cul-de-sacs in a 1-block radius, making this project very neighborhood compatible. 2 cul-de-sacs are across the street, and 1 cul-de-sac is directly behind the property. The neighborhood feedback is extremely important to me. I've made great efforts to communicate with everyone over the last 11 months. And for those who want to be involved and included, some people don't. The green stars indicate neighborhood support. Please note the house that is for sale with the red dots in the back. There is a 71-page biological resource analysis on this property that's included. Oops, did I go too far? Oh, I'm missing one. Oh, technology. I'm out of order. So we'll just have to wing it. Hold on a second. I need to, can't see my whole screen. But here's what's most, this is the most significant tree on the property and what it looks like. I thought that was a really good picture to show, because when we talk about significant trees, I think it's something beautiful and lovely, and this is what it looks like today. Wish I could find my place. This is the replacement trees. Okay. So there's 18 total replacement trees for right now. On the site improvements, there's a quantity of 6. But we'll get into the landscaping plan, and there's about 600 plants that will be planted. Above on the far left is the old landscaping plan, and that's the one that the Site and Architecture Committee has seen in the past, which was about a year ago. The new plan eliminates flat lawns. It adds about 400 additional trees and shrubs, running with the natural topography, and creates a thick evergreen screening wall for neighborhood privacy. The new plan also includes special scenic highway designs. Understanding concerns for our good neighbors on Arley, a thick 4-layer screening of evergreen foliage is designed for full coverage and complete privacy. Hopefully you guys can see this well, because I'm not sure how that's going. What about environmental review? Well, in June 2020, after careful consideration, the city of Monte Sereno adopted CEQA MND, as Jeannie stated, stating that the project will have no effects on the environment. So there's a 71-page report that's included. It's detailed information on birds, nesting, bats, arrowheads, worms, red-legged frogs, and salamanders. Also included is a full traffic study, which found there would be no impact, a noise impact on others, again, no impact, and 2 full arborist reports. The first one was done 3 years ago. The second one was done about a week ago. Again, the project has no significant adverse environmental impacts. In 2019, the site and ARC saw a grading plan that was almost flat. Today, this new minimal grading plan enhances the natural topography of the land and solves the draining concerns. So this is kind of like if you're standing in the middle of the yard and you're looking away, on the left is away from Highway 9, that's Arley Court to the left, which is the natural topography, which will remain pretty much the same. And on the right is kind of the unnatural terrain, and it's kind of a big hump there that needs to come down to bring the water forward. So note the backyard on the left and the front yard on the right. There's a hump on the right where grading is needed. That is where most of the grading would be. You've seen this one before, but yes, why the grading? There's going to be some questions about that. The blue arrows represent the direction of water. The top graph is the current drainage, and the bottom is the correct drainage plan. Most of the grading occurs on lot number 1, again, where that hump is, and also the road for a conforming driveway. So over the last 100 years, soil has kind of overtaken the retaining wall. It's that kind of view right there because gives you an idea of how much higher it is. This application is different from the previous application. It replaces the retaining wall instead of removing it. And that would removing it, restoring the original beauty, and also it perfectly matches the neighbor on the left. And by the way, they are in support of the project. So that's again the front of the property. I tried to take pictures. It says 1,000 words, right? This is the front of the property. Again, you're looking towards Highway 9. You're on Highway 9, and you kind of see how the property was lifted up. That I was told from when Highway 9 was widened, the dirt from Highway 9 was put on that property so that a house could be built on top of it. So it's actually, the land that you're looking at now is not the natural topography. Today's scenic highway. So the trees that you see there, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all those are major significant trees, which don't really look significant to me, but they are based on city standards. So I hope this presentation offers to you tonight the additional vision to be one of the most beautiful projects in Monte Sereno. It's also sure to be one of the best projects happening on Highway 9 by creating beautiful homes and a truly scenic corridor. So I want to thank the Site and Architecture for your members and ask if there's questions.
Okay, your council wanted to speak, but you filled all your 10 minutes.
He can speak in the rebuttal.
But,
I'm here
but
for.
if there's something quick to add, Mr. Ramakrishnan, I'm happy to afford you that opportunity.
Thank you. I'm here for any questions and for the rebuttal, but thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant or her counsel? Those blank stares tell me no, but they look good anyway. Very good. Thank you both. We're going to open it up to public comment now, and you guys will have a chance to rebut when that's concluded, okay?
Okay, great.
Thank you both. All right. Public comment. Again, folks, 3 minutes. And my first public comment person with their hand up is Matt. I think it's either Edis or Edis. I apologize if I mispronounced it, but welcome. Tell us where you live and begin your 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. My name is Matt Edis, and my family lives right across the street from the property in question, in the historic home at 16202 Serena Vista Court, which is a similar cul-de-sac. We're very much in favor of this project. We feel that it will make our neighborhood better, and conversely, further delay not only hurts the property owner, but it hurts the neighborhood as well. We moved to Monte Sereno about 6 years ago. Very soon after that, the existing house on the site in question burned down. And since then, we've had 5 long years of looking at a graffiti-covered, burned-out foundation. There's crumbling concrete, dying trees, and even the sidewalk in front is decrepit and in need of maintenance by either the city or Caltrans. We as a city make a big deal about the Highway 9 scenic corridor, but it looks terrible like this. Is what we see there now what we want at the entrance to our town? We're sick and tired of this, and it is a source of embarrassment when friends come over. 3 nice new houses and a properly maintained cul-de-sac would go a long way to improving the corridor, and in fact would make that side of the street much more in character with the cul-de-sacs and small streets which are currently on both sides of the road, including the one in which we live. If the city didn't want this property divided, it should never have been zoned R18. It has 10,000 square foot properties right behind it, so any suggestion that the presence of a 12,000 square foot property would change the character of the neighborhood is disingenuous at best. It should be noted that Monte Sereno is famous for dragging processes like this out, preventing owners from doing things which are very clearly within our own laws. When we're looking at buying our house, my friend in the real estate business specifically told me that I'd be nuts to buy a house in Monte Sereno because the council fights every little thing. He said, you don't want to live there. They are NIMBYs about everything. If you want to do even the tiniest thing to your house, your neighbors will complain and tie you up in the council for years. We decided to buy anyway, but how many people choose not to buy houses in our town because of this? This pushes down everyone's property values. How much time does Monte Sereno spend on fighting property owners who want to do things that are completely within the limits of the law? How much do we spend on lawyers fighting development in order to support one neighbor's personal vendetta against any sort of change? Is that the kind of city we want to be? Our family strongly supports this proposal and look forward to meeting our new neighbors once homes are built. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Edis. Appreciate it. Okay, the next person that wants to speak is Stephanie. Stephanie, if you could state your full name and where you reside, and then what your 3 minutes will commence.
Thank you.
Oh, we see you muted, Stephanie.
Can you hear me?
I can't hear you now. Great.
Perfect. Hi, Stephen. My name is Stephanie Labouvet, and my family is also adjacent to the property at 18050 Arley Drive. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I am just honestly so sorry that you have to even be here tonight, away from your families, tonight's historic vice presidential debate, and other home responsibilities to review this proposed subdivision plan yet again. I, of course, recognize that this must be very, very frustrating to you all. It's frustrating to me too. Many months ago, the good people of this committee reviewed the facts of the proposed subdivision plan and deemed that it was inconsistent with the general plan of Monte Sereno, and thereby suggested that the committee deny the project. After many hours on the phone in an open forum, much like the one we're having here tonight, the town council followed your recommendation and denied the project. Unfortunately, our town council and town lawyer have subsequently proven themselves to be cowards. When presented with potential lawsuit, rather than upholding the strong community values of Monte Sereno, they have elected to take the easy path, to ask each of you to give up your valuable time to reverse the course of your previous decision to avoid a lawsuit. If I were to imagine to be sitting in your shoes here right now, I would honestly be so offended that the town council clearly values the financial threat of a lawsuit by an outside development company more than the intelligent and thoughtful minds of the members of the Site and Architecture Committee. Either further adding insult to injury, I understand that the city attorney has instructed you to not to even talk to your own constituents who are severely impacted by this proposal ahead of tonight's call. I presume that you've all been invited to our property at 18050 to see the huge visual impact that this proposed subdivision and thereby subsequently built massive houses will have on my family's privacy. I know that the city planner has reviewed the proposed subdivision and deemed it fit to her liking, but we all know that the city planner is just one individual contributor and there are two sides to every story. Her word is not God. Even with the addition of these short little trees that Annette is proposing, they are just that, short little trees. They're not going to do very much. Many years ago, I found myself eating pizza my heart in the Monte Sereno town office with a group of constituents, and one line from an older resident, I think he was a former town mayor of Monte Sereno, stuck out to me. He said, "You can say no to developers 1,000 times, but all it takes is one yes to change Monte Sereno and its character forever." Tonight, I urge you to stand up to the bullying of the town lawyer, town council, and Annette Seaborn and do the right thing. You all rationally considered the facts previously on a night that was not the historic vice presidential election. The facts have really not changed. I plead with you to protect the rural nature of Monte Sereno and say no yet again.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie. Hey, folks, if you want to talk tonight, please speak to the project, not to people. Okay? I will interrupt you if I hear that again. It's inappropriate. Speak to the project, please. All right. With that, I'm going to invite another Labouvier to speak. I don't know if this is going to be Dan or Laura, but you guys are up next.
Oh, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. My name is Dan Labouvet. I live at Arley Drive for 22 years. Since this is the fourth meeting on the same project, the neighboring community objections are well known by now. I would like the council to please make the following three recommendations. Number one, an environmental impact report is required for the proposed project because there is CEQA standard of a fair argument that will have significant environmental impacts. Please refer to the legal brief I included in my previous letter. A negative declaration is improper and an ERR is required whenever substantial evidence in the record supports a fair argument that significant impacts may occur. The City Council resolution to deny the project and at least 16 inconsistencies with city policy create a CEQA standard of a fair argument that significant impacts may occur. Since CEQA precludes Housing Accountability Act, it is possible to mitigate city policy inconsistencies under EIR that would not be possible under Housing Accountability Act and without being in violation of Housing Accountability Act. This is a common practice in other cities and avoids litigation. Number 2, please reaffirm Site and Architecture previous 5-0 denial of the project. The city attorney's recommendation to avoid litigation is based on a bad decision from the Hanchari case of the 5th District in Fresno. This is fundamentally different to this subdivision project and would likely yield different results if tried in the 6th District. Furthermore, the justification of extreme housing crisis is losing political steam as Silicon Valley growth rates have been declining since 2015 and were only 0.25% in 2019. COVID will further reduce the growth, undermining this justification premise. Even if Housing Accountability Act applies, which it does not, the project violates objective standards. And as stated in the City Council resolution to deny the project, such as inconsistencies with city policy, excessive grading, tree removal, noise, drainage, scenic highway impact, and traffic safety concerns. Number 3, please impose constraints to mitigate negative impacts if the project is not denied. Housing Accountability Act is intended to facilitate construction of low-income housing, not multi-million-dollar McMansions. If the city is forced to approve a project under Housing Accountability Act, please require that at least one lot be developed and made available as low-income housing for 30 years, similar to the Montavo Oaks projects. Mitigate the visual impact of Lot 2 and 3 for Arley Drive neighbors. Require to keep trees 139 and 140 for landscape screen. Please keep the structure on Lot 3 behind tree 140. The existing landscape plan is insufficient. Require installation of mature 20-foot landscape screen such that 75% of construction is obscured prior to project sign-off. Require that mature trees removed to build the structures are replaced with similar size and located in the rear lot yard to replace Arley Drive natural views. And lastly, lower the maximum structure, including any tilted solar panels, to 15 feet above previous lot natural grade or the roof natural grade, whichever yields the lowest profile. Thank you, and please recommend an EIR to deny the project and to impose constraints if the project is not denied. Thank you.
I want to talk.
Thank you, Mr. Lebube.
Wait.
My wife wants to talk too, but we'll come back around with another raised hand.
Okay. All right, then I only have one other person, so hopefully Laura gets ready quickly. Ms. Shakar, you're welcome to speak on this particular application as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I'm the resident of Monte Sereno. I live on 18290 Davis Avenue. I object the subdivision for the following reasons. This proposal has already been reviewed and denied by both Site and Architecture Committee and the council members before, and the reasons for denial has not been completely addressed. The litigation threat has not solved the topography and location challenges. These physical and practical constraints still remain. This imposes huge impact to the immediate neighbors. The general plan goals, LU1 to LU4 of Monte Sereno, are violated heavily, and Housing Accountability Act criteria are overruled. This subdivision is in front of a single lane each way of Highway 9 and with the electricity pole right in front of the lot. This will negatively impact the traffic flowing from Los Gatos to Saratoga, the pedestrians and the bike riders. Our kids bike down this road frequently, and this imposes a hazardous scenario. The current CEQA analysis is not adequate to protect our community. Thorough CEQA analysis should be adopted without fearing for the threat of the litigations. Monte Sereno doesn't even have its own school, police, or fire services. It is dependent on neighboring towns for these services. Not sure how subdivisions like this can be accommodated without jeopardizing the quality of the services that the current residents receive. It will not be too long before current residents will be depleted of the services and facilities that they're leveraging from the neighboring towns due to these subdivisions. Housing Accountability Act criteria 1, 2, 3 are not met. Number 4 absolutely has to be challenged due to the complexity this property poses for city analysis. Number 5 is a good winner for us. We as a town already have a defined neighborhood character and design guidelines that we need to defend as a promise to our seniors and to withhold the same for our younger generation. Very valuable innate characteristic that we cannot compromise due to the threat of litigation. We owe it forward. Probable move forward option for the developer. Build an estate home on this beautiful 1-acre lot to even further improve the property and enhance the characteristics of Monte Sereno. Advantages of this option. It poses minimal impact to the topography of the land, improves the value of the homes around, sets the right precedence for other lots with similar challenges, shows that the developer really cares for the residents and not take advantage of the beautiful town these residents have safeguarded till now. Immediate neighbors will not be starved of their quality of life. Let us remember, all the immediate neighbors have been living there for years or generations. Not fair to dip into their pockets, only focusing on one's capital gains. After all, we are living through pandemic, and I bet this has made us realize what is most important at the end. Capital gains with very, very high dollars, or human values and connection with decent high dollars. I propose city has a meeting with, yes, in my backward group, with some of the few residents to ensure they understand as to what why the city has covered how we want to develop our city, and they probably have to focus on their time and energy on real issues, else it will defeat their nonprofit objectives. That's it. I really request this proposal to be denied.
Great, thank you. Great, time's up. And I appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. Mr. Forster. You're muted, Mr. Forster. You're still muted. There you go.
Okay, I didn't understand. Oh, I was muted. Okay, once again, we are revisiting the same issues that the Site and Architectural Committee reviewed over a year ago, but with a different developer. Same issues, privacy of these monster houses that are not going to be built, three large houses on this 0.96 acre. And again, the privacy issue is paramount here to all the neighbors on Arley Drive and either other neighbors on Viewfield. The other thing is, by doing this project, as pointed out by Mr. Drury's letter that was submitted earlier by the La Bouvets, this project will require the destruction of 22 of 46 trees over 6 inches in diameter. That is just ridiculous. I mean, scenic Monte Sereno, scenic highway doesn't mean destroy trees that are 6 inches or larger in diameter. Finally, it's just revisiting the same thing again that we revisited a year ago or over a year ago, again with a different developer. And again, all the same issues were raised. And again, we're facing the same thing because of another developer it's just got to be tasked with doing the right thing and making this a much smaller development in terms of the number of houses and the size and height of these houses. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Forster. All right, and we're going to go back to Mrs. LeBouvet.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you now.
Okay. Hello, commissioners. Thank you for your time. I wish we were here discussing a favorable revised project, but instead we are rehashing the one discussed and denied 5-0 on April 3rd, 2019. The only difference tonight is that the applicant, Ms. Seaborn, bought the rejected plans from Mr. Singh, modified the grading from over 6,000 cubic yards to over 5,000 cubic yards, and is trying to game the system by only proposing site plans without getting site development permits. Grading, tree removal, house expansion structure, an unsafe cul-de-sac, and horrific visual impacts to us and adjoining neighbors still need to be considered. The residents of Monte Sereno and Los Gatos overwhelmingly opposed this project and filled the room at the 2019 Site and Architecture meeting and stayed on the City Council Zoom meeting on June 2nd, 2020 until well after 1 a.m. and then again on September 1st to express their objections. Instead of trying to cooperate with neighbors, Ms. Seaborn has chosen to threaten to sue Monte Sereno under Housing Accountability Act, although has yet to spend her money to file a lawsuit. I hope you were able to read the 10-page brief from our lawyer, Richard Dreary, explaining why HAA does not apply to this project. He states that even if it did, which it doesn't, a complete environmental impact review must be required since there are so many serious problems to evaluate. EIR findings trump HAA, grading issues, hazardous noise levels above 60 decibels, excessive tree removal, and safety concerns with adding a cul-de-sac all need to be reevaluated. The public was told to just approve the mitigated negative declaration by the city attorney on the June 2nd, 2020 city council meeting so we could discuss the project. We were all unaware of the implications. The city council voted 3-1 to deny this appalling 4-lot subdivision project because they agreed with your 5-0 denial that this proposal was just the most economical way to build a street and subdivide the remaining parcel into 3 lots to pack in 3 multi-million-dollar homes without any regards to the community. Monte Sereno's objective standards and guidelines were not addressed in Mrs. Seaborn's proposal. Giving concessions to a developer because the applicant threatens to sue is setting a devastating precedent for Monte Sereno. I have heard that another applicant is already going down the exact same path. Please stand up for the residents you represent and deny this awful project once again and send a message that Monte Sereno holds true to their guiding principles. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bouvet. Okay, I think that is all of, oh, I see one more. Susan, you're free to speak. If you could just identify us by your first and last name and where you reside, please.
Hi, my name is Susan Ward, and I reside at 18650 Withy Road. And the first speaker, I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, was so eloquent in saying that this has been an eyesore for 5 years along the scenic corridor. There can be nothing worse than the graffiti on the building that is left there. And I'm a novice, but if we're talking about what zoning is allowed and what is in the surrounding area, this fits in right into the zoning. And from the sound of it, we're talking about a 1-story house, which is not a McMansion. I almost feel sorry for the fact that it's 1 story, and it can, you know, how big can it be with 1 story? So it's probably the best use of the lot. And I just think we have to look at what is in the surrounding area and what is allotted for the acreage.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Ward, very much. They keep popping up as we go here. Mr. Tam.
Hello, how are you?
Well, how are you?
Good, good. I still continue to object to this development.
Hey, Mr. Tam, tell us where you live.
Sure, certainly. I'm the owner of 18030 Arley Drive in Monte Sereno.
Okay, thanks.
And I'm just directly behind and adjacent to the proposed Seaborn property. So again, we are revisiting this. I still continue to object. But what's come up to my attention is that there's yet another proposed development. I don't think it's made it to the site and architecture or to the commission yet. But directly behind my property is 18061. So that's a neighboring property of 18081. And I've just received a letter that they're proposing to build 2 homes there. I believe that property's already been subdivided based on the map. And so I think what my point really here is that we're going down a pretty slippery slope here. I mean, we're going to allow 3 homes to be developed there and then another 2 eventually when it comes up because it'll be meeting regulations. Then all of a sudden, that corridor now will be, instead of having 2 homes on 2 lots, we'll have 6 lots, 5 dwellings. That's like a 250 to 300% increase. And I'm not suggesting that we don't do anything, that we leave it as a blighted property. I think that's a gross exaggeration. I think what we're saying is let's build something that's a little bit more consistent, and it will be just as beautiful. And I am, for something of that nature rather than cramming a bunch of homes in and really changing the nature of the corridor at this point. So that would be my my input. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tam. Mr. Foster, I see you here, but everybody gets 3 minutes. You may have gotten 2. I'll give you 1.
Hello, this is his wife. I'm saying.
Oh, well, you get a free 3. Go.
Okay. I don't think it'll take the full 3. I just wanted to just mention one thing. The owner of the property, it seems to me, would be responsible for the blight. And I guess that would be Annette Seaborn. So maybe that's who needs to be dealing with the graffiti and all the tackiness. And also, I don't see what's wrong with, one beautiful house, one big beautiful house on that property. Someone, we've talked about 3, we've talked about 2. Why not 1? Anyway, that's about all I have to say. Because we keep, things keep, daggers keep being thrown. It's like, okay, well, she's the owner of the property, so it's her property that's so ugly. So she needs to kind of deal with it. Okay, that's all.
No, thank you very much for your comments. Okay, anybody else from the public that wants to speak on this last agenda item? Seeing none, I'm going to give the applicant and her counsel an opportunity to rebut. You guys have 5 minutes. If there's anything you want to say in response to the public comments, you're welcome to do so now.
Okay, yes, thank you. This is Eric Ramakrishnan on behalf of Seaborn LLC. And I do have a few things that I want to talk about, and I'm happy to answer any questions too. So the first thing that I want to mention is that there are 3 things that have changed from the last time your commission has seen this project. One is that your commission had comments about landscaping, and so the applicant has developed a landscaping plan that improves upon the former landscaping plan. And in answer to Commissioner White's question at the beginning of the proceedings here, that landscaping plan is incorporated in as part of condition of approval number 2. The other piece of this that's changed is, as you know, that the house designs are no longer included as part of this plan. The applicant is only seeking the tentative subdivision map. And so at the time that houses would be built, those would come before your commission for review. And the last thing is that grading has been minimized here. At this point, grading will be done for purposes of drainage and for purposes of required grading in connection with the cul-de-sac. And with respect to the grading, the city standard is simply to minimize grading. There is no more objective standard than that. This project does minimize grading, and it minimizes grading in the interest of protecting surrounding neighboring properties from water flows. 2/3 of the water will now flow to the existing drainage systems in the front of the property, and there are detention basins in the back now. So those things have changed. We've heard a lot about the Housing Accountability Act. I do want to just speak really briefly on the Housing Accountability Act. It is settled law that the Housing Accountability Act applies to market rate properties. That's clear not only from the Honshroot case that was mentioned this evening, but also from the structural differences in the Act between subdivisions I and J, and from the findings that are in the Act that refer to making housing available to all income categories. The Housing Accountability Act says that if a project complies with all objective standards that the city has imposed, that the city must approve the project. It's deemed to comply with an objective standard if a reasonable person could find that it complies with an objective standard. So the burden is on the agency to show that it doesn't comply. And most importantly of all, it's also, a project is also deemed to comply unless the applicant was informed in writing 30 days after the application was accepted by the city for processing that the project doesn't comply. Here, the applicant has not been so informed, and in fact, staff's report demonstrates the project does comply with all objective standards. And so under the Housing Accountability Act, typically the city's options would be to approve the project and not reduce the density from what was proposed. I'm happy to answer any questions about the jury letter that was referred to, but I don't think I need to go into that at this point. We did hear about a couple of impacts that I want to talk about briefly. I've already discussed the grading. With respect to trees, the CEQA guidelines speak to compliance with the city tree ordinance, and this project will comply. The city's tree ordinance simply says that you need a permit to remove a tree, and if it's deemed quote unquote significant and you have to replace trees at a 1-to-1 ratio, this project will exceed that 1-to-1 ratio and replace very unhealthy trees for the most part on this site with healthy California native trees. As was indicated in the initial study, many of the trees slated for removal on the site are in poor health. And that was demonstrated also in some of the pictures that we saw earlier in the applicant's presentation. With respect to traffic safety, Hexagon did a study in connection with the mitigated negative declaration. Hexagon is a reputable traffic engineering firm. They indicated in there and demonstrated with pictures that the project already has adequate view down Highway 9 for traffic safety, and that the project will improve visibility. With respect to noise, CEQA is not concerned with impacts of a project. CEQA is concerned with impacts of the project on the environment, not the other way around. The noise impact here is the existing impact of Highway 9, and for the most part, noise has been mitigated with a sound wall and with mitigation in terms of there would be requirements that the homes be built in a way that mitigate interior noises, and that can be done here. The city also does not have a particular noise standard. There is no specific standard codified in the general plan or the municipal code. 60 dBA was mentioned in the MND as sort of a staff preference, and that was used as the point of analysis.
Okay, well, I think we're at the conclusion of your 5 minutes. I want to be fair to you as I was to everybody else. Is there some final point you need to make that if you walked away from here, you'd be disappointed you didn't make?
The last point I just want to make is that in terms of aesthetics, the MND did analyze through photo simulations and show that this project will improve aesthetics from the highway. The project is on the opposite side of the road from the scenic views in the distance, the mountains. And also, I just want to quickly say that the CEQA guidelines have been updated from the guidelines that are included that that the MND is based on here. In terms of visual character in an incorporated area like this, we focus on whether the project complies with standards. And this project does comply with standards for reasons set forth in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramakrishna. Appreciate it. All right, I am going to conclude public comment and the opportunity for the applicant to rebut and bring it back to us as commissioners. Probably more questions than there are answers off the start. I know I have some, and these may be appropriate for Ms. Hamilton and Mr. Radin. My first question is, I'm hearing that we're looking at the same project, but this doesn't look like the same project I looked at a while ago. We're approving a map tonight and a landscape plan.
We're not, this is like a lot of the comments were about, oh, we're revisiting something. We are not revisiting. We're not
Yeah.
looking at houses. We are looking at just a map.
Right, and Ms. Hamilton and Mr. Dean, can you confirm that? We're not approving any sort of improvements outside of the landscape and what may be warranted by civil engineering as reflected in this plan.
No, that is correct. Generally, in order at the subdivision stage, you're basically approving the legal split of these lots into separate lots that can be either sold or built on. In order to build any improvements on this, it still need to go through the city's typical regulatory process, including obtaining a site development permit for building any houses on these proposed lots.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then I have another question for both of you or one of you, whoever wants to answer, is there's been a concern communicated by one of the neighbors, I think on the western side of this property regarding the sound wall. And I see it in this L1 drawing. Is that a requirement that the city has imposed on this project, or is that something that the applicant has chosen to install on their own?
I can speak to that. This is City Planner Jeannie Hamilton. That was as a result of the noise analysis and the impact of the highway noise on the private open space for Lot 1, that in order to mitigate that down to what has been accepted as the noise standard at residential property line of 60 dB. And at the time, the highest fencing we would allow is 6 feet. That's a sound barrier to mitigate the sound down to 60 dB for Lot 1. There was a comment on that environmental assessment and was further reviewed relative to would that sound wall increase now the sound on the adjacent property at the corner of Viewfield and Highway 9.
Right.
And it was found that if anything, there would be a minor net decrease because it's now blocking sound for westbound travel onto their property.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so the short answer is this is part of the applicant's proposed project, and the reason it's part of the applicant's proposed project is to try and avoid any impacts related to noise.
Understood. Thank you both. Any other questions for Ms. Hamilton or Mr. Dean, commissioners? Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry, Steve. I had one question.
Sure.
So help me understand, or can I get better clarification why an environmental report was not required on this project?
I can answer that one. So in general, there are several levels of environmental review under CEQA. The first level is typically is a project is just altogether deemed exempt under CEQA. And typically a subdivision of this size might actually be deemed exempt. I think out of an abundance of caution, staff decided to do a second, more stringent level of environmental review, which requires preparation of an initial study and then a determination by the city as to whether there is the potential for a significant effect on the environment. If there isn't, the city adopts a negative declaration. If there are the potential for significant effects on the environment, but they can be mitigated with some relatively minor mitigation measures, the city adopts what's called a mitigated negative declaration. So it's not that an EIR was not done on this project because staff did the analysis to determine that an EIR was not required for this project to begin with. And that basically any potential for significant effects on the environment could be addressed with some minor conditions imposed on the project and minor mitigation measures.
Thank you.
I got another follow-up question, sorry. We're approving the landscape plan to this project, and I have no idea where the structures are going to be. And one of the key reasons why we denied this project in the past was because of some of the privacy concerns and view issues that arose by virtue of the proposed improvements on the lots, which were visible by story poles, which we are now not under consideration. So how do we protect these neighbors who have legitimate privacy concerns and view concerns without knowing where the proposed improvements will be?
I will address this in part, and then I may kick it to Jeannie. You know, with respect to these particular lots, they're, you know, first, the city's subdivision regulations already limit the maximum height of the structures. Two, given the pipe-shaped lots and the required setbacks that are imposed as a result of the city's zoning regulations, it's fairly tight in terms of what the proposed buildable area is on those lots. And I believe, Jeannie, maybe you can point to where those proposed buildable envelopes are in the plans. I recall that they are depicted there somewhere. And you can try and compare that to how the landscape plan is in sheet L1. And, you know, imagine a worst case scenario of, you know, 16-foot tall building, you know, from the height of the original grading within the envelope of that buildable lot. Now, additionally, you know, while that landscape plan is what it is, if there is some sort of particular design issue that arises as a result of an identified impact from a particular design that's proposed at the site development permit stage, you know, the city retains its discretion while approving a site development permit to require, say, additional screening or, you know, additional conditions on that site development permit. So, you know, you can look at the landscape plan now to get a general idea of the aesthetic impacts of the proposed project and its compliance, and additionally sort of how it would look, you know, given the proposed design for the subdivision. But if there are going to be particular, you know, impacts when it comes time to consider a site development permit, that's going to be another opportunity to address impacts specific to the design of that structure.
So tonight we heard, for example, consideration of 75% coverage of the structures that would or could be constructed on these lots. We can't entertain such a condition tonight because we don't have the site development permit in front of us. We're only making a recommendation regarding the tentative map.
I think that's correct.
Yeah, if you look on sheet T2 of the plan set, you'll see the wide dotted line. That's the building envelope, which reflects a 30-foot setback for each lot from the rear property lines. So that's the buildable area. And for lot 3 and lot 2 in the staff report, they have an additional requirement which kind of further constrains their buildable area.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else with questions before we try and figure this out? Great. Okay. Well, I'm going to try and get people to focus. We have to make the findings, or in order to approve this, we have to make the findings that appear in the resolution that is attached to the staff report, and specifically those that are enumerated in items 1 through 5. If we're to approve this, if we're to deny this, we are required to make the findings that exist on page 16 under the heading alternatives, under item number 1. And then we can also make modifications as a part of our recommendation, as reflected again on page 16 of 17 at item number 2. Those are the 3 courses of action that I believe we can take, and Mr. Redin, correct me if I'm wrong there.
I think you're identifying the right questions. Either you need to recommend to the city council that the council approve, and the council make the findings that are required for approval of a subdivision map, which are laid out in the draft resolution, or the Site and Architecture Commission would need to recommend denial or reduction of the project, making the findings that would typically be required under the Housing Accountability Act, that there's a specific adverse impact on public health and safety based on objective and identified public health and safety standards, and that there's no other method to mitigate or avoid those impacts, absent denial or reduction in density. The third alternative, which you mentioned, is modifications of the project, and really that's something that the city of Monte Sereno can only require, in response to the project not necessarily meeting some sort of standard of the city. You can require a condition of approval instead of, or in lieu of denial, if you can't make the findings under the Housing Accountability Act. You can impose a condition of approval to modify the project to get it closer or entirely into compliance with some sort of city standard that you identify.
Thank you.
Okay, I asked a question. Could you put ADUs on this property once it's subdivided into three, or the three lots? That's, I guess, a question for Jeannie.
Can you repeat that question?
There would be a way to put ADUs on any or all of the three lots based on the building envelope and the landscaping requirements.
Again, under the current state laws related to ADUs, there's opportunities to do attached ADUs to the primary structure. There's the ability to do an attached JADU to the primary structure. There's also the ability to do detached ADUs. Again, I think every lot in the city has that opportunity currently or in the future.
I will sort of comment, realistically speaking, the city cannot, condition or, remove the opportunity to do ADU development, which is something that every property owner of every parcel in a city that's zoned for residential development is entitled to do. It's not something that's part of this project, and really would be difficult for the city to base any conditions of approval on directly. It is my understanding that it might be difficult to construct detached ADUs on these particular parcels in light of some of the drainage improvements that are required under the tentative map. Obviously it'd be difficult to construct an ADU where you're obligated to have a retention basin. So that may constrain, as a practical matter, the development of ADUs in the future, but legally that's not something that the city can take away from somebody.
So that kind of answered my question, because I think from a practical matter, given the drainage constraints and the landscaping, it seems like if you want to put an ADU in the back of the property, it would be very difficult from a practical perspective. Okay.
All right, guys. So back before us. I don't ordinarily like to work backwards, but I'm going to make a suggestion for a moment, just for consideration and for discussion purposes, because I'm not necessarily sure this is the way we should approach this. But if one of the alternatives, if denial is an alternative, when we need to make a finding that there is a specific adverse impact upon public health and safety based on objective and identified public health or safety standards, policies, or conditions, and we need to determine that there are no feasible methods to satisfactorily mitigate or avoid the adverse impact identified, including via modification to the project that could be reasonably imposed by conditions of approval. Does anybody know of any any adverse impact upon public health and safety based on objective and identified public health or safety standards, policies, or conditions that would apply here?
No.
I can't see it.
What did Brian say?
No.
I mean, the only thing we talked about previously was getting out of that cul-de-sac, which I don't see as really any different than getting out of a driveway. In fact, it's probably safer to turn around in the cul-de-sac. That's the only safety and health issue I can think of that would be applicable to the lot.
And I think there's a traffic report that would contradict that finding.
Right. Right.
So I mean,
So the answer is no, right?
Yeah, I don't know of any. If somebody else does, I'm all ears. But denial requires us to make that finding.
Right. I mean, yeah, when you put it that way, you know, our hands are really tied in terms of, you know, what we can do here. I mean, personally, I think it's too many pieces of property stuffed on a little lot. I don't like the side house of lot 1 up against the corridor with there's going to be a fence there. There's a lot of things I don't like aesthetically about it, but you know, is there a hazard? Are we jeopardizing public safety? No.
No.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it'd be great if somebody wanted to put a big house there. Somebody suggested that in the public comment, but that's not what we're reviewing tonight.
Right.
If we're going to deny this, we need to make specific findings that I don't see any evidence of, nor can I get creative about them. So if we can't deny, then the alternatives to us are going to be to recommend that the city impose certain modifications that have to be in conformance with some aspect of the general plan that we don't see here. Again, I don't know of any of those.
So
I mean, I agree with Steve. I think we're put between a rock and a hard place. I absolutely agree with his comments regarding this project. I don't feel any differently about this project than I did however long ago it was when it was before us, when there were story poles up there that had just such mass that it was difficult to understand how it could be screened for the folks at Arley. But the way that this has been presented to us, I think our hands are tied.
I 100% agree with both Steves.
I mean, presumably the commission will see it all again once the developments are, you know, put forth.
Yeah, we'll see the houses when the houses come through, but the subdivision part, I don't really see it. I don't really see a way out. And you know what? I don't really think I need a way out. It's perfectly legal. It's perfectly logical. I don't even think I need a way out.
I've reviewed the items reflected in the proposed resolution, section 1, items 1 through 5. I'm unaware of any facts before us today that don't reconcile with making those findings, or at least recommending that the city of Monte Sereno make those findings in conjunction with approval of the map. Does anybody else know of any such unique facts that we should be evaluating these particular findings specifically and making comment that they don't exist?
No.
I don't have it.
Mm-mm.
Oh,
Okay. Then with extreme reluctance, I'm going to move to recommend the city council approve the tentative map that is before us is item number 3 on our agenda.
I'll second that.
With that, I should have finished, sorry. With that, I believe we are making the findings or recommending the city make the findings that exist in section 1 of the resolution. So I just want to augment it by that because I think that's an element of what we need to do tonight.
And I have a question also with regards to the motion. Does that include also imposing the conditions of approval as mentioned in the resolution?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. You have to prompt us on that. It's our first night with those conditions, but yes, augmented with those conditions as well.
Okay, I'll do roll call. Commissioner Wade?
As it's, I'm gonna put a caveat on this. I have to. I mean, as it's presented to us with what we can and cannot do here, I have no choice to vote to say aye.
Commissioner Mekachuk?
Aye.
Commissioner Kroc?
Aye.
Commissioner Harrington?
With reservation, aye.
Chairperson White?
With reservation and regret, aye.
Wait,
Okay,
does that really count?
that motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
I'm sorry, folks. Anyway, not ideal, but all right. Is there any other business for us to address tonight, Ms. Hamilton?
I would like to update the Commission on Council's action related to the proposed fence ordinance that had come before you at your September meeting. Council at a, 2-1 vote, Council Member Luthold had recused himself, voted to not introduce an ordinance to modify the fence ordinance. So it's, as of this point, dead in the water. Other than that, that's all I have.
Thank you,
I'm
Chief.
going to make the best motion of the night to adjourn.
If I could say one thing, Chairperson White, I think you did a great job today. There was a lot of people, and these were very difficult times. So well done.
Thank you for that. All you guys would have done.
I second that.
And I say aye.
You guys would have done as good a job.
Thank you, Steve.
All right.
That we
You adjourn tonight. Dinner. Good night. Thank you, everybody that participated this evening from the public.
Right.
Good night.
Good night.
Ms. Hamilton.